And Murph will appreciate this. Would you rather do wires at the state level or wires at the federal level?
State level.
Damn right.
Yeah. If nothing else, we don't have to have approval at DC to go up. So, we one time had an assistant DA that was involved in some stuff, and we walked a wiretap through, my boss and I, and drafted the app order affidavit, called the presiding judge, the appellate court. The attorney general has to sign off on it. We got that done in 48 hours. To go up on a wire.
At 48 hours, more of those guys they wouldn't even be done collecting documentation.
Oh, we can even write the affidavit.
That was a corruption case again, a public corruption case with a DA, an assistant DA, and it was important. So, that was an all-nighter. Yeah. We worked together, divided up, and but it was important and had the judge on standby. That wouldn't happen federally. It's got to go to DC, and so... So anyway, I love my time at the Bureau. Again, another job I do for free the rest of my life. At this time, I'm presenting, kind of teaching a lot of stuff on the Fourth Amendment at conferences, and I just thought it was odd that I'm teaching knock and talks or consent encounters, what's reasonable for constructive refusal on a search warrant, all these things. Never done it myself. It just seemed kind of odd to me. Talking about probable cause, I'd never had to evaluate it myself in the field. So I really went to the police academy, got certified as an agent, just as kind of the next step in my growth as a law enforcement resource.
Yeah, but that's kind of one of those things you just glossed over. You kind of went blah, 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 then I became an agent. So, right. Let's rewind a little bit. What was the discussion like? Or what point did you say, was it because of the teaching? And by the way, do you remember Thomas and Means, a couple of attorneys, I think, out of South Carolina, used to do a lot of teaching on Fourth Amendment, search and seizure stuff?
No, I don't know those guys.
Okay, anyway, that was one of my staples of reading, to your point. I was from the other side. I was never a lawyer, but I wanted to say, look, but you got to dive into the law to understand it. New York versus Glass on the ability to look inside a vehicle without a search warrant, et cetera, besides, the Carroll Doctrine and stuff. So anyway, but the reason I asked that is, how did that conversation go? What was the tipping point to say, okay, I'm going to apply. Here I am leaving a job as a prosecuting attorney, and I'm going to go schlep it with, people in the field. What was the tipping point for you?
It actually was two phases. When I became an agent, got certified as an agent, I had no intention of leaving my job as a prosecutor. I was as an agency attorney. By that time, I'd become the general counsel at the Bureau. Of course, just like DEA, we license doctors. I have to deal with administrative law. I'm the general counsel, and but then all these guys are my friends, and they say, "Hey, Brian, we got a buy bus. Let's have you out on this. We're going to go do this controlled delivery. Come with us." And I had my administrative duties, and so that's who I ran around with. We'd go to each other's houses and cook out, and our wives were friends, and we'd just have barbecues and those kind of things, and I realized, and at this time I'm 34, I believe, maybe 35, and I realized that, man, life's pretty short, and I look forward to all these going out with my buddies and working these cases, and I dread my administrative crap, and I felt like I was going to court on wire cases, and I'm just sitting waiting on dockets the whole time, life's too short, and so I just basically just pulled the trigger and said, I'll take a pay cut and I'll become an agent. And my director said, I'm 100% behind you. And that's how it happened.
And just for our listeners here, the fact that the investigators were inviting a prosecutor to come out on site with them, that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
Who invited the lawyer? That was normally what's said. Yeah.
Well, it was like having in-house counsel on the deal. And so they're friends of mine, so they asked me to come out there, and I just remember thinking, man, these guys make less than me, and I can't say that I'm happier than them because I make more. So I just took the pay cut and became an agent. The general counsel, he was a deputy general counsel. My best friend, who's now still the Bureau's general counsel, they kept me of counsel, so they could. I still wasn't a lawyer for the Bureau; I was classified as an agent. And so I did that and just became an agent. Thought I would stay an agent the rest of my career. And again, I should realize I should quit making long-term decisions because I can't sit still.
Were you married at this time?
Yes.
Do you have children yet?
Yes, I had one at the time. Yes.
Did your wife ask you to go get some kind of professional counseling?
So she was kind of cool with it. Of course, my wife did this kind of stuff that it was, she still, if I was out on a deal, I don't do that now in my current position, but she'd say, "What time do you think you're going to be home?" And I was and I just, she doesn't learn. And I'm
3
like,
days from now.
I don't know. Well, when do you think? If the snitch does this and shows up to package at 8:00, you're forced an answer.
Yeah.
And then at 8:15, I thought you were going to be home at 8. Like, no, you made me say I was going to be.
My advantage of my wife worked down at the police department, so she knew how it goes, especially when I was a detective. It'd be one of those things going out the door. It was more like, "See ya."
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why I just kept kind of asking. And so, but actually the tough one was my mom. My mom, I mean, she went to tears and she just said,
"Oh, wow."
She did two things. She said, I don't want you to throw your law degree away. I'm like, "Mom, I'm not doing that." I said, "Everything I've done, I feel like I can be an effective agent because of my background." I mean, and I'll tell you, like, in my agent time, every search warrant I wrote it like a me, myself, and Irene, as if I was the one that was going to defend it. Every report I wrote it as if I would want to read it. Every consent encounter documentation, I did that knowing what was kind of there on the court side. And then of course she's the whole thing. "I don't want you to die. And if you're going to, the danger." And I said, "Look, Mom, I'm telling you right now that there's a lot of stress. Being a lawyer, it probably will kill me. I mean, it'll shorten my life. And there's probably a greater chance of a quick death, but overall, I said that the way it's going, it probably will be. So I just think it's that kind of next phase for me." So she was cool with that. She thought I was going to throw my degree away, and I said, "Absolutely not."
"Well, Mom, I'm going to die either way, but I think this way is going to be quicker." That's not exactly. My mother knew kind of what I did, but she never really knew until she came to an award ceremony one time. And she said, "I don't want to come to these things again." She didn't want to hear about what it was that you did the things to get the awards for. And moms are that way, but I've never told my mom, "Don't worry, Mom, I'm going to die one way or the other. I think this way is just better." "Oh, I feel so much better now, son."
Think about telling your mom and dad that you're going to Columbia.
Oh, yeah.
That's where the jaw hits the ground and look like, "You are a freaking idiot. We always suspected it. Now we know you are stupid."
When my mother-in-law found out I was going to Pakistan, that was kind of the same thing. You're going, "What?"
Yeah. I can't imagine. I still feel bad telling my wife, like, we got like a 1 week mission. I want to be gone for a few days, and I just, because it's puts all the picking up the kids and everything kind of falls to her, and she's phenomenally supportive. I mean, you can't do this without a supportive spouse, but it
takes a special person.
But I recognize it's hard on there. It's very disruptive to their life.
Now, did your wife ask you what time you're going to be home today?
No, well, she knows today. I told her that we're starting early, so I should be done with this by mid-afternoon, and so
we're going to keep you till like 8:00 tonight. Let's run out the clock. No. Well, speaking of that, but you went back into, so when you became an agent, how long was your academy when you went through? Now, that was the OSBI, Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation?
No, there was our agency sends them, there's an overall police academy for the state. And so at the time, I was the last academy that was 9 weeks and was transitioning to 16 weeks. And so it helped me because it was only 2 blocks from our headquarters. So I would go to the academy and I'd go to the headquarters at night, kind of catch up on my emails and legal pleadings. My boss was covering kind of court appearances. And so because it was short and I didn't have to stay there, they've since moved it. You have to reside there. I was able to kind of pull off both being a lawyer and go to the academy.
That's almost like being back in law school, clerking, working a full-time job and trying to study for the bar exam.
Yeah, it was a tough, I mean, it was only 9 weeks, but yeah, I was trying to do both and maintaining, kind of keeping on top of stuff and doing stuff at night on the weekends and on my lunch hour. Sometimes I could go right back to the office.
So when you went through the academy, what was the biggest paradigm shift you had versus what you thought it was going to be like versus what it was? Because you've always been on the other side. You've obviously worked with a lot of people that had to go through the academy, but now you're going through it. Did anything change for you, or did you say, yeah, this is kind of what I thought it would be?
I would say it was kind of what I thought it was going to be. I mean, I'd been in, at that point, I think I'd been in law enforcement 11 years. And so I had been in law enforcement that long. And so everybody else are kind of, it's like a basic training. They're, young as hell, never done this. I'm not sure we had anybody in my whole, there's 100 of us. I don't think any had any prior law enforcement experience. Now, some of them were working at the time. So they're short-handed at a small department. They'd say, swear in, go to the academy, and they'd work for a few months, go to the academy and come back. But in terms of, no one had previous law enforcement careers. And so I just hadn't been around it. And it was just, the basic stuff. The legal block was kind of odd,
Were you correcting them?
Yes. So here's the deal. I told myself,
wait a minute. I can see why it's going to class. Wait a minute. Objection, Your Honor. I mean, teacher. Objection, teacher.
Yeah. So I did. I promised myself I was going to shut up and I want to get through this and be done.
And how long did that last?
The second day and of the legal block. And so, I don't know, there were two occasions. I mean, we got into screaming matches. He's like, bullshit. I'm like, bullshit, motherfucker. I mean, we got into it in front of the class. And one of them, he said that it was a stupid thing. The fruit of the poisonous tree applies to Miranda violations. And I'm like, no, that's actually not. Recent case of Patain. That's the only violation takes place when you make the statement. That's not, oh, you are absolutely incorrect. And it pissed me off. So I went to the office and I printed off the fucking case and I highlighted it, put it on his podium.
I can tell you've gotten over this.
Yeah, and he comes back, and so what he does is he goes outside and says,
I'm glad you've learned to deal with your anger issues and stuff.
And so we got and the other one was on a Fourth Amendment issue, but yeah, so I put it on there. Now I'll say this: there's an anecdote to this. So everyone saw us go after it. I mean, we went after it. I say that 2 or 3 times. He called me outside on a break. And he was a chain smoker and said, you know what, I've read that and I'm going to have to change the way I teach. Now, and which is fine. He apologized. He was incorrect in it. And he was a very smart guy. Had been a defense lawyer, but a very smart guy. And I just said, look, at the Bureau, we have the ability by statute to appear in court. You're a skilled litigator. I mean, he was a good arguer. And I said, you ought to just do that. You can appear from time to time in court and just kind of use this. We don't have that. We need always good people in public safety. And so anyway, I kind of said that while we were talking outside. We had one other argument about a scrivener's error on the description and a warrant, and it's whatever. I was right both times, but
I like you got that. So, but I was right both times.
Yeah.
There you go.
So we graduate at the graduation deal. I went to him and I said, hey, we could get a picture. I mean, after all this, people were joking about us getting into, and he talked to me for about 30 minutes. Whole class was waiting. The class commander comes out and looks out like, are you guys? And he's like, go back inside. We're talking. And so he is out there, I'm a student, but the class commandant would actually listen to the instructors and told him to go because we were going to talk. And anyway, so he tells me when I'm graduating, he said, ever since I've not argued with anybody in years. I've been here at this job. Ever since you said I ought to get back in the courtroom, I just can't get out of my mind. And I got to tell you, I've put in an application to be an assistant DA. Within a month, he is still an assistant DA today.
Wow.
15 years later. So we did that, and he's a talented guy and became a prosecutor because we argued in our academy. So
hallelujah, brother! You converted him. You brought him over to the light side.
Had another altar call. Amen.
Right.
By the way, when you started, how many people knew your background? I mean, did he get around pretty fast? You were coming in being a prosecuting attorney.
Gosh, Morgan, I'm trying to think. Probably we went around the first day. Where are you from? What's your background? Type thing. I don't remember that. It became pretty evident when the legal block started about I think that was like
the second
early
day
on.
is what I heard. Yeah,
that kind of stuff. And I had no intentions of doing that, but I just couldn't stand it. And it was like, that's not right. And I'm not letting them say this thing. And I just did that. I try to be respectful. Then we just, I got into a disagreement like people, just like a defense lawyer in your office telling you, that's bullshit. And we kind of go back and forth. It was kind of one of those deals.
Yeah, but what you did? You did the right thing though, because that's the other thing though too, is you can't let people go out armed with bad case law.
They're going to get sued. You're going to lose cases.
Yeah.
Or that's a point, or you'll miss the opportunity to make cases because you've been told you can't do X when in fact you can do X, and follow it through. Right. So I'm glad you followed through on that. So, but how did you go about when you said you worked for the Bureau? Let's be very clear now. Which Bureau are you talking about?
The Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics. It's just like a DEA for the state.
Okay, and separate agency from the OSBI?
Yes. Yeah, we have our own independent commissions and directors. So it's a freestanding agency. So it's before my time. There is I've heard, I don't know if this is accurate, there was just some concerns about political influence on the state police. So the Department of Public Safety, which is Highway Patrol and a few agencies, they report directly to the governor. But we have 3 state agencies: OSBI, which is investigations, Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics, and they used to be one agency and split off. We have independent commissions that oversee and appoint the director, and there's one called we have an alcohol licensing that's just a much smaller agency that kind of deals with the alcohol license.
How do you deconflict when they're doing a dope case and you're doing a dope case? How do you control those things?
Well, our OSBI will not do any dope cases. They just do. They only have original jurisdiction on like oil field theft. But so they're a support agency that if an agency, a smaller department, has a major homicide or a conflict case, an officer involved shooting, they'll ask the OSBI to come in and investigate. But for all of us, for deconfliction, there's one central database. It's actually maintained through our office, funded by HIDA. And you can do event, which is the actual, like the deal itself, or a subject deconfliction, which is the person, to make sure you're not investigating somebody that another agent is, or just kind of collaborate. Or if you're going to go do a deal, make sure it's not an undercover officer and, on both sides and a blue on blue. That's kind of the event deconfliction.
Well, and that's what I was getting at with Murph earlier. Murph, that was his case where he was down in Florida, that pickup truck that's got was it Hialeah or some other cops that were in there?
Yeah, some Hialeah. And our officers, we were going blue on blue. And thank goodness it turned out the way it did, because when we came up with our vests on and our guns out. If we hadn't approached them, it could have gotten real ugly.
But a lot of times, Murphy knows this. You're on a deal in surveillance. You're not wearing your body armor. It might be in the back seat, but if somebody walks by your car and looks in the windshield, they can't see a big police ribbon on your vest. Right. And so it's there. And so if it happens really quick, you got to jump out, and we all look like turds. And
I always wore my vest underneath my clothing because it looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Then nobody wanted to screw with me. No, just kidding.
Yeah, no, believe me, Morgan, it did not look like Arnold. I'm telling you, it don't matter how you wore it.
Well, I wasn't talking about Arnold then. Maybe Arnold now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about then going into this next case, because when you got assigned, where did you stayed in the same area, work in the same area? So you're now an agent in the same area that you were prosecuting an attorney?
No. So I'm at this point, when I became an agent, I transferred to Tulsa, because our headquarters is in Oklahoma City. Just for my wife and I, it worked out great, because at that time, her sister lived here, my sister lived here. After we moved to Tulsa, then both sets of grandparents to be around grandkids. So now all of us live in Tulsa, but none of us she's from Northwest Oklahoma. None of us are from this area, but now it's home to our whole family.
Yeah.
And so I go to Tulsa, and that's just kind of where family is, and had never been in Tulsa. Other than driving through it before I moved here as an agent.
Well, back in the day when it was still called the Earl Roberts Towers, my sister was married in that. Her husband worked for a book publishing company, Christian book publishing company, on the 57th floor, and I think our reception was on the 60th floor or something. Tulsa was that was an awesome building. Yeah. I guess it's a cancer institute now or something.
Yeah, it's the Cityplex. It's a number of things. The old hospital was for a while, but there's a number of offices. There's radio stations there. There's all kinds of things in there, and which is actually like about 2 blocks from the bureau office on Lewis. It's about probably 81st, be 2 miles away exactly from. So I drove by it every day on the way to work.
So let's talk about now as an agent. How was when you first, now that you're getting into it, how is the work for you different than as the prosecuting attorney? I know that's kind of an obvious question, but now you're doing things, now you're generating the paperwork and the work that guys like you used to review and take to court.
So, I'd been an agent in Oklahoma City first for a year. That's where my kind of the FTOs, which again were very dear friends of mine that had trained me. I come here, and I had just this background, and what I found was, whether it was like a corruption case, a defense lawyer that would be in trouble that they wanted to investigate, I got to know all the people on task forces. I was still in the legal division. I was supervised the wires on this side as a supervising attorney. And so I just got to play a role in a bunch of other people's cases. And I worked with the HSI, saw a lot of good friends there, the DEA groups, the HIDA and enforcement groups, and also with the U.S. Marshals. There was a fugitive task force, and so I kind of got attached to them for a while too, and they were never full-time assignments, and I just again still stayed in I mean, I'd been a prosecutor for 11 years. I still know all the people there, and just kind of had this weird crossover, and just would try to go and work with all the people, and again, there's a lot of investigations that just have kind of this strange component that being a career drug prosecutor would help with. And so I just was blessed enough to where I got involved in a lot of people's cases. I mean, another way of saying that is, if it's a jacked up deal, hey, let's call Brian, and I'd kind of go and do that, and just made dear friends the whole time.
But did that cause a problem from a rule standpoint? Did you have conflicts then with other attorneys because you are, in a sense, acting as a supervising attorney or working as well as being the agent? In other words, are they saying, "Hey guys, I mean, you got to pick one or the other. You can't do both," or could you do both?
So no. So I would either do one or the other, kind of in cases. Obviously, I would never appear as a lawyer in a case, which I was a witness, which is kind of
that would be great to cross-examine yourself.
Oh,
Your
yeah.
Honor, the witness is entirely credible.
Yeah.
I think we should just go to a direct finding of guilt.
Yeah. And again, which is exactly what happened every time. And I felt like saying that, but I wasn't able to do it. It's really weird. Look, I need to respect the fact that I had a role as an assistant DA, but being a drug prosecutor 11 years, I'm taking cases maybe to somebody that had only been at law school 2 or 3 years. I mean, I'm still teaching at the state conferences on things about conspiracy prosecutions and search and seizure. And here I'm teaching at the prosecutors boot camp they have every year. I'm just one of their instructors. And so only one time did I ever have to play that card. And it was just, a prosecutor was telling me I had done a cell phone, a search, a warrantless search, and he said, this is before Jones, but where the courts were very clear.
You got to explain Jones. You see, you're a lawyer. You throw that out just before Jones, and Plessy versus Ferguson, and whatever.
Yeah. So initially, the courts were very consistent. It changed a little bit, but that if you arrested somebody with a cell phone, you could search that cell phone incident to arrest. The flip phones, they equated it to like just a
pocket
wallet,
letter or a wallet or something.
Absolutely, an address book and what have you. And then because of smartphones, it was and Jones was basically kind of stands alone. They didn't extend the law. They just said cell phones are so different with smartphones, what you can see and look into someone's home with cameras, blah blah blah, that you need to have a warrant. Well, this is before that. And it was a flip phone. And so he basically just said, and his thing was an exigency. This guy basically, and what happened is I saw the case get continued because he didn't call the right witnesses in the case, and because I didn't want to say evicted witness, and I was in the courtroom, and then he goes up, and this little junior prosecutor just said something like, "I think we have to get rid of this case because your search is bad. Where's the cell phone going to go?" And I said, "Okay, Junior. Do you know about the Anchondo case?" Which that's why that's relevant. It's not important, but no. And I start quoting stuff, and he didn't know what I'm saying, but it sounds right.
Does he know your prior prosecuting attorney?
He learned it pretty quickly, and and it sounds right. And I'll say that after that time, that guy had called me. He went to another county, and he had called me in to be an expert witness on something. And I'll say this to his credit. He said, "You know what? I think I've looked at that law. You were good now, and we're all going to be good." So that's the only time I didn't like doing it, but I was a little bit, because it told me that I had done a bad search. Which what that means is I committed constitutional misconduct such that the court would suppress what I found to punish me and teach all officers a lesson. Now, that's what the exclusionary rule is, to suppress evidence, the Fourth Amendment. And I think that's lost, like it's some kind of voiding a contract. Let's just see who gets to win here. And if you're going to say someone did a bad search, you're going to say, hey, you're doing clear misconduct that if true, I would lose my qualified immunity when they sued me.
And it's potentially precedent setting too, if somebody feels it.
So that was the only time. But most people knew me because I would be up there and they'd call me with kind of issues and questions, which I could kind of I mean, obviously, we all got to be on the same team. And I don't ever want to be adverse. We have enough adversaries in public safety. We cannot eat our own. I mean, I just don't think we advance that. So that's the only occasion. And it kind of happened organically. And it was all good, but that's the only time I...
Well, let's talk about your mental health, because you talked about the other stuff was kind of like soul crushing, doing a lot of admin work. How did your behavior change? How did you change, and how did you feel once you got out into the field?
You know, with I remember I thought I was the most pro cop prosecutor out there. Hell, I might have been, I don't know, but I prided myself on that. And I realized the very first case I did, I'm still a lawyer, but back then, this would have been in 2006. This is the Uncle Fester meth lab days where they'd buy cases of pseudoephedrine and manufacture meth. And a guy with 3 teeth and a mullet in a trailer shaking up a bottle, and it would just make meth.
So basically an OSU grad.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I think.
I know.
They were all from Kansas. I don't know what the deal was.
There you go. There you go.
And but Oklahoma was the first state that put it behind the counter. We made it We actually didn't make a prescription. We put it behind the counter, and you had to sign a register. It took a trooper getting killed on video by a meth cook on his body, and a horrible, just executed him when he came across a meth lab in rural Oklahoma. And once that happened, then the lobbyist couldn't stop that law. So we passed that law. Of course, our meth labs dropped 90% overnight. Then everyone else picks that up, and bam, we don't have meth labs. Which again, as a kind of to walk back when I talk about policy, when people say, like some kid named Connor goes to his intersectionality class in college and say, "Hell, we tried prohibition, it didn't work." They're talking about alcohol. Well, that's why that chapter is where the meth labs go. We don't have meth labs anymore. Didn't legalize it, didn't give them treatment. We did enforcement, and we passed a law, prohibited people getting it, made it suck to cook meth, and it stopped. And so we don't have those anymore. But back to this case. So in Oklahoma, people couldn't get pseudoephedrine. Well, this lady had flown to Utah and went to all the stores, bought a suitcase full of pseudoephedrine to bring back, which is a precursor chemical to manufacture meth. She's bringing it back to cook meth. And I got a tip. She's going to be at the Will Rogers International Airport in Oklahoma City. So I'm just going to do a consent encounter. And I'm going through my head of, is this going to be a USB place, detention of the suitcase? I mean, going through all this kind of crap. And I knew her. The reason I got the call, she's from my hometown, or the district I was at, put her husband in prison for manufacturing. So the narcs up there called me and goes, "Hey, Brian, so-and-so's coming back with a suitcase full of meth from a snitch. We know this. We think it's legit." So I was like, I'll just do a consent encounter. So I know her. And I said, I badged her. I said, "Hey, Deborah, how you doing? I'm just, I'm working at OBN now." And then and I'm thinking, I'm going through all my mind to make this freaking case. And she just says, "All right, Brian, look, all the freaking pills are in that suitcase right there." I'm like, son of a bitch, what?
You can't make it this easy, damn it.
I was like saying, I wanted to go, get my digital recorder and say, "Special Agent Brian Surber, today's date is blah, blah, blah," and I'm about to talk to Deborah. And I'm like, shit. And so I don't want to stop it. And so I do this consent encounter, and if anyone say, "Hey, why don't let her record it, dumbass?" Like, well, I didn't know she was going to do that. I was fixing to contact her to detain her luggage, and then all of a sudden she tells me it's there, and I can look in it. So, and the point I make, and I tell that story when I'm trying to talk to prosecutors or other officers, is like, look, I never 11 years of trying to hang out with cops, advocate for them in their mission. I realized when I read that shit on Monday morning, I know how the story ends. Mm-hmm. And I never appreciated that till I did it myself. Like, you don't know, is it a consent encounter? Is this guy going to fight you? Are they going to run? And so to have all this planning of how you'd want it, I just didn't even fully appreciate that. So that's probably the first sticking experience that I used all my everything I'd done to plan to make this great case. And it just completely, because of her cooperation, like, just gave it to me, and I couldn't stop in the middle of it and just asked her to re-say it on my digital recorder in my pocket, and so I'm like, damn it. And so that's exactly how that deal went down, and it served me so much. Look, being a prosecutor absolutely helped me in in being a narcotics agent, special operator.
So
likewise,
how did you
being
go?
a special.
How did you go back and? Sorry, because I wanted before you move on. How did you go back then? And because I used to do the same thing, but it would with the. When you're talking with them and you don't have we didn't used to record everything up front, but I would always go back and record basically the summary. I'd sit them down and said, you remember when I brought you in, right? I sat you down here. Remember when I advised you of your rights? I told you this. I told you this. Remember when you said you agreed and you signed yes, 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 and and then we signed again. I'd get that back all on tape to kind of recap it. How did you go back and recap that with her so you had the evidence of her permission to search?
Morgan, I should have done that. I'm not going to say that I don't recall independently.
There's a legal answer. I don't recall independently, Your Honor.
I mean, I'm trying to think. Look, because what stuck with me is that I remember like one of those things, like when Reagan was shot, Challenger exploded, where I was standing in her face when she said that, in this shock, like, oh hell. So how I did that, that I'll say to the peace officers listening again. There's two types of defenses. There's a legal defense. I didn't do it. That's not my pants, and then there's they're not my pants. The drugs are in, which they always say, have this dope in your pocket. I don't know, not my pants. I don't know why. When they go to turd school, they say, first thing you do is deny the pants are yours,
Well,
and it's
we
great.
got the stories of the guys who denied the syringes found in his rectum were his. No, I don't. They're not mine. Well, how'd they get there? Anyway, which is
more surprised than me.
The other defense is a legal defense, which they're going to attack the officer. And I'm like, look, guys, if you do recorded interviews on the guilt, did you do it, and confessions, you also need to interview, just like you're saying, Morgan, on, hey, why'd you give me consent to search? You remember doing this? And it's not just did you give consent? Was there any coercion? Did I, and short of them saying, what do you mean why? You told me you're going to whip my ass if I didn't, which didn't happen. Then now you're at, because when you litigate the suppression motion on voluntariness on a consent, his state of mind's at issue. The entire case, they're going to do it in front of a judge, not a jury. So why not get an interview as to their state of mind, as to what they were thinking at the time? And I think that's a great thing to do, to kind of, even if it happens beforehand, sit down and kind of go through. And
I used to joke about it too. I said, now look, did anybody threaten to, draw and quarter you, put you on, the rack and, torch you or anything? Anybody try to threaten you? No. One of the favorite tricks I learned from another guy too was you feed them. You go down and get them McDonald's or something. You bring them on a big case. Sorry, pal, you're not getting McDonald's just because you heisted a bike. But on homicide cases or stuff, you get them a McDonald's, take a picture, say, hey, we just want to show that you received the food because we're spending public money. Hey, just give me a picture. They'd go, hi, I got the McDonald's. Kind of hard to argue that in court when you're eating. You've got a smile on your face with a Mickey D in your hands.
Yeah. Well, and as another trick, and heck, you may edit this out, but like on consents, like interdiction, like they have the right to withdraw the consent. It's our burden to prove they didn't withdraw it before you found it. If you say you got a white supremacist gang member, you're out by yourself, it may be perfectly reasonable to put him in a situation like in a car where they're detained, where he can't get out and do this, but that also may keep him from revoking his consent. So you may roll down the window if you try to leave yourself an out to say, hey, if you're revoking your consent, so we can just say, hey, I changed my mind and I couldn't get out and tell him. But even if all that happens, when I go back to your point, Morgan, of in the interview, say, hey, dude, I appreciate you, you being cooperative. You let me search. Why'd you let me search? I don't know anything about it, which if you deny knowledge of it in there, that shows the voluntariness that you let him search because you said you didn't think it was in there, or I didn't think you'd find it.
And it also kind of removes their, as they say, the legal term, standing to object, right? Because if it's not yours, there's certain things you can't object to.
Right. And so again, that's just one of the reasons to say, what were you thinking when I was searching back there? Like, I was hoping you wouldn't find it. But anything other than, well, I was wanting to tell you to stop. And so now you're actually getting that, you're making a written, recorded record of what that mind state was at that time.
I actually learned a technique from somebody who was in sales. And it was actually, I used it a lot on interdiction stops or even consent to search stops, because when you're out and you want to buy something, Murphy, you know this too, somebody's trying to pressure you. The easiest way to say, no, I'm not interested. No, the people want to say no. So I would phrase all of my questions in the terms of, hey, certainly you're not the type of person that brings illegal narcotics into our state, are you? Well, no, certainly you're not the type of person who would engage in violations of the law. No, and then it would all lead up to, would you have any objection then if I searched your car for these things? And they want no means yes. So they would say no. They feel good about saying no, even though no means yes, because you say, can I search your car? And they go, no. Then you're done, right? So I would just flip the question around a little bit and say, would you have any objection if I searched your car? No. Thank you very much. Stand here, and then you get somebody to talk to them and distract them while you're searching. And then, again, you watch their body language. Am I getting close? Am I getting close? Are they getting more nervous? But everybody's got the things that they learn over time. But like you say, you've got the advantage because you have got the training experience, the degree and stuff to know, what's going to play out in court later. You know the limits of what you can do and still have it be admissible in court, where a lot of cops are strictly just relying on training and some skill, but they don't have the legal basis that you do.
Right. And what I've seen for the most part, I do not see, I've been around in different states and in this game for, 26 years now. I do not see violations of the Constitution. I just don't in searches. Now, do officers always fully articulate why they're being reasonable? Because that's everything with the Fourth Amendment and the searches is, was the officer's conduct reasonable?
Yeah.
I don't think we have unreasonable officers. I just don't see that, especially when I went out there in the field. Now, again, do they always write down everything that's relevant to what makes that reasonable? Probably not. And that's what you learn when you kind of go out there. So that's again, how I would write down everything to justify what I was doing. The way I tell officers is, I want you to imagine, like, say it's just a DUI arrest. I said, I want you to, if you want to know how to write a report, imagine that right now, as soon as you get done, your boss just says, you idiot, you just arrested an innocent person. Like, no, because they told me this, they didn't deny it, they admitted they were. Don't just put in there the red bloodshot eyes and everything, but put everything that would say, because all of that stuff becomes relevant on your probable cause. A defense
attorney's going to say he's got red bloodshot eyes because he's crying because he just lost his favorite dog.
Yeah. Allergies are going off, and incontinence. I don't understand. I don't look. I've had
ask Murph about that. He can tell you about that. Yeah.
I have no recollection of that one.
Yeah.
As he's, let's not even go. Hey, well, let's move this exciting conversation forward then, because you're out in the field now. Again, you're working narcotics. You're working for the Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement, right?
Yes,
what do they call it again? What's it called?
The Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics.
OBN, right? So OB, and if you put the color gray in there, you would be OBGYN. But anyway, different story. Anyway,
that's why I had to be a cop.
That's right.
He's not a comedian,
and I'm not Todd McComas, one of our other episodes either. So you're with OBN now. You're working drug cases. So now, how do you get involved in a kidnapping case? Let's talk about this case too, because this was very interesting, because there's a link that goes with it, a story. So let's set the context for this. What was going on that got you involved with this?
So we had the Bureau has we have a lot of databases, a lot of unmarked car special operators. So we typically have someone assigned to the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force, the one in Oklahoma City. There's actually 3 in the state. And so I was kind of assigned to them part-time, not a full-time gig, but part-time. And it was just a great networking thing. There's guys from other departments on there. It's a task force. You kind of, again, there's sometimes we'd be on a murder suspect. We may have information in our prescription databases, help tracks down baby mama, whatever it might be. It was just a great and a good group of guys. And so we would sometimes go out, and again, if we had a roundup with a bunch of violent targets, the Marshal Service would go out there, and it was just it was a great crew and a lot of good friends on there. So I'm on this thing part time, and it's a Sunday afternoon, and I first learned about it on the media. We had a group me that we did on text message, but there's been an 8-year-old girl is just kidnapped off a playground in broad daylight. A guy just runs out of his car. It's at an apartment complex.
And where's this at again?
In Tulsa. And the guy just runs out of a car, and just, grabs her, jumps in the car, and takes off. She's 8 years old. And it's one of those horrible things you kind of hear about. I think she might have been the oldest child there. It was right outside the apartment of the parents. There's a apartment playground, and they didn't get much of a description from the other children there, but someone saw a car speeding away. There was a description. I think they may have said a male. I'm not even sure I don't think we even had a race at the time. And that's like late afternoon. It's in April. And so I see that on the news, and then kind of we start the group me starts going off like, hey, we're going to meet down at we had a name for the station. We call it Little House. We're all going to meet down at Little House, which is a smaller office, and we're going to start going out there. They're mobilizing everybody they can to do that. And at this time, we've got nothing. We have a car description, and that's it. So we're going to do something. So we basically go and do a knock and talk, which is, walking up, knocking on the door, talking to every registered sex offender in Tulsa County. And just to say, what kind of car do you have? Look in a garage. And can we look for the girl? They're all very, oh yeah, they want to show, absolutely, I don't have this girl kidnapped here. That's all we could do. And earlier in the day, and again, there are a lot of really, I just think exceptional people, heroes. A good friend of Wayne who just stuck his head in here. So earlier in the day in Tulsa, a guy seemed like he was high on drugs, bought some coloring books at a discount store, and they saw on his license he was a sex offender. And so they called.
Wait a minute. So on the driver's license in Oklahoma, you have a designation as being a registered sex offender?
Yes.
Wow.
And so they had seen that. And he tried to pay for it with a check, and they saw
is it in the shape of a target or anything?
You know what's funny? I don't even know. I don't do traffic. I don't know what it looks like. I've never looked at a freaking pervert's license. I know it has. I'm not even sure what it's probably like under 21 type thing.
Hey, Murph, show him yours.
Yeah,
dog.
So that happened earlier in the day. I mean, and she just felt weird. So this worker called and I don't think to this day, I don't think the dispatch took the call. They don't even know what store it was. But called and just said, this was kind of weird. I want to let you know about this. And it was in a suburb from about probably 30 miles away, an entire other county outside of Tulsa County. And it was in the department where Wayne Stinnett was a detective.
Uh-huh.
So Wayne was not assigned to the marshals, but another detective at Claremore. This Claremore is where the call came in. Was. So that's just it. Well, the dispatcher took real good notes on it and actually notified the officer, like, hey, we just had a call about this guy. I'm not going to say there's a guy in this, and I know you guys don't say names to give them about. So the piece of shit, we'll get to that. And he's known to them. He's got a pretty violent rape that happened years ago. And so we're just out looking, and Wayne was with his kids out of town at I think some kind of a ball game tournament, gets back in town, wasn't assigned, but knew some people out there and said, look, little girl's been kidnapped. I remember calling me, said, what can I do? And so they said, if before you come out here, do you mind stopping off at piece of shit's house? They know where he lived. Just see if he's there. And so talked to his mama, who's a total enabler. Haven't seen him since this morning. And
so he's still living at home with mom?
Yeah.
How old is this guy now?
I would say 32, 33, around there, early to mid 30s.
And thanks to Al Gore's amazing internet, I pulled up an image of the Oklahoma DO, and it puts sex offender in red letters at the bottom of their picture. Then there's like a smaller picture with sex offender over their face.
Okay, well, there you go.
Pretty obvious you're a sex offender. Actually,
yeah,
it's got the Kansas one too. Below Kansas, where it says on the ID, it says registered offender. I have to check my driver's license.
Yeah. So Wayne's out there. He tracks down Mama, and I'll tell you, one of those guys I've talked about that are just a tremendous. If it was my deal, I cared about it, I would put Wayne on an interview all day long. And Wayne's again going in soft, and where's POS at? And I don't know. And like, what's he drive? Bam. It's like, whatever it was, like a silver Camry. It's like he drives a silver Camry. Like, okay, what's his phone? And it's turned off. And we're like, all right, at least that's the best. I mean, that's the best we had to go on. And it's way after, it's probably 11, it may be after midnight. It's dark. And so essentially Wayne just sits. He just sits with her in case he comes home or to make sure Mama doesn't call him on her. We don't think she's telling us his real number, actually, because we don't know what his number is. So we're at least kind of looking, and that's at least kind of where a suspect is. Well, on the other side, I mean, probably 45 minutes away on the other side in a whole nother county, it's Sunday night. Now it's probably like 1 a.m. There's a deputy that gets called because there's this guy, seems high on drugs, that he's at like a Whataburger, some fast food place that was open, and the officer goes up there to talk to him and is going to arrest him for public intox. And he gets in his car. They get in a struggle. He takes off and starts dragging the officer. And he can see he's about to hit a gas meter, and so he has to unass the car with the door open, fighting the guy, and gets thrown in the street and skinned up really good. But he can identify that. I don't know if he had the tag, but he could say, okay, this is piece of shit. We've kind of are not sure. We had not pushed it out to the media yet, but he says that. So now we all converge and go over to this town. It's Sapulpa, which is on the west side, another county. It's a suburb of Tulsa, and it's about 1 a.m. It's a town of about 30,000, and essentially, when I was actually on the west side, and besides the Sepulpa officers, I was I think I was the first one of our crew to get there, because I just was checking hotels for that car on the west side of Tulsa, and I got there pretty quick. In fact, the ambulance is he has really got a bunch of road rash and cuts on his head, and they want to transport him, but he refuses because the little girl's out there still. And if you know anything about these stranger abductions, there's an over-under. We're past it. It's like they're almost always killed within, like, you want to find them within, I want to say it's 4 or 5 hours. We were beyond it, because after that, the likelihood of them being killed just goes up, because these predators, when they do this, they kill them. So it is the high intensity thing. We're all chasing this. Well, we kind of get there. The guy that ran the marshal service, the commander, we're kind of looking at and by this time, I mean, everybody's there. It's just like, I mean, the town's dead except for about a ton of unmarked cars. I mean, just everyone looked like bees buzzing, kind of going everywhere. And we're trying to figure out, by the timing, how far could he be? Call the highway patrol. We're looking at the highways that go out.
Now, he's still in his vehicle, right? Or is he on foot?
Yes. Yeah. So,
okay.
No, he's on his vehicle. So the deputy that contacted him, kind of just walking up to this, where he was in this fast food parking lot, and just contacted him outside. I don't think he knew who he was, because he was walking up, and he had driven on, got in his car. They get in a fight, and he puts it in gear. I think it was maybe running, and then it just ends up throwing him. So we're trying to figure that out, and I'm like, I had to do something. So I'm driving around. Well, I see these people standing at a convenience store, like at 1 a.m. And I just stopped, and I had another guy, an agent named Dawson Kane. He just transferred to Tulsa. He did not know the Tulsa streets. He's in his car with me, or he's in my car, because he said, look, I want to go out. He wasn't on but he heard about it, and he just said, I'll go, and he jumped in my car. And so we pull over, and I'm like, hey, did you guys see like a car? And then he just kind of we do one direction, but anything they knew. And he said, yeah, about 20 minutes ago, he wasn't at the convenience store. He said, I saw this car with its lights off, and he describes car like whatever the description, kind of hauling ass, and it took a right on this. And he starts telling me these streets in Sapulpa I don't know. And I just said, okay, do you mind if I load up my car, show me where that is? And so he goes, yeah. So he gets in my car, we drive a few blocks, and he tells me where the guy, this car with its lights off, was speeding, just turned off. Well, at that time I had like a GPS, like a Garmin up my dash, and it's on the very west edge of town. And it was a neighborhood, probably a whole division with about 4 or 5 streets, but all of them looped back to this main road. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. I'm not sure why. I didn't have lights on my car, but I thought, okay, I get on the radio. I said, guys, I think he might be here. I'm not so sure. He might be still here. And so some other buddies of mine, the detective from Claremore, and another good friend of mine named James Williard, who was a prior officer there, they come up one street over and turn the lights on and tell the helicopter, we got Tulsa's helicopter, just said, hey, we've got a last known direction of travel here, but he went in this neighborhood. And so I've got the guy standing out, we're talking, and we've got people at all the exits out. And there's one at the very end where a marked unit is for Tulsa PD with a canine that was assigned. And the helicopter's looking for, with a FLIR, looking for the heat signature of the car. They're looking for that. And after it wasn't very long, but that helicopter gets there, a minute or two, then all of a sudden, right south of me, 2 or 3 sheets down, I see this car go out with its lights off, with the same sedan with its lights off. And I said to the guy, I said, "Is that the car?" And he said, "That's it." Well, right then, Clint, who was the canine, actually was the Chief Jordan's son, Tulsa's chief's son. He was on the radio. He says, "I'm behind him. I'm in pursuit." And so we just all get in that deal. I leave the guy there. I'm like, "Sorry, dude, I'm going." And I just left this guy in the middle of, there. And it looks like, it's like the OJ car chase. It's 40, 50. Every news media all over Tulsa's there, and we get in this pursuit on this guy. And look, this story is real. It's impactful to me, but there's some funny anecdotes. So Dawson Kane, he's the agent that's he's with me, and he's played football in college, and again, we've been after this guy. We're trying to save this little girl, and because we're thinking, okay, that what's going to happen, and we've been looking for him, and we've gotten closer, and now we're in pursuit. And I look over, I'm like, okay, first of all, he just fought the officers. We may get in a freaking shootout. I was like, Dawson, I'm going to say, why don't you, call David as our supervisor. Call David and tell him we're about to get in. It may get sticky. He may need to come out here when there's fixing to be abuse of force, because I don't think it's going to end well. I look over to Dawson. He's got his rifle between his legs, muzzle pointing up, and he's in this amped up bouncing, and he starts the shit talking. He's like, "Oh, motherfucker, we got you now, motherfucker, we got you." And he's just, just exactly who you want. If and I always say,
was that him or the dog?
No, that was Dawson. He was amped up, and he can't sit still. It looks like like the tunnel in the pregame, the strength coach holding the guy back. He is just like bouncing up, and he's not talking to him. He's thinking out loud, talking to the guy like. It was an intense deal, getting exactly the energy you want. Again, if your daughter's kidnapped, that's who went out there.
Absolutely.
This pursuit goes on for a while. We're behind. I can't remember if they did stop sticks, but he gets shut down. Won't get out of the car. We got guys up there. Got to pull him out. And then she's not in the back. We open the trunk, and there's like 3 or 4 of us there, and I just remember
your heart's already going into your stomach. What
are you going to see when you open the trunk? And we open it up, and she's not there. And the guy, the officer that fought him, is all bandaged up. She used to go to the hospital. Somehow, I can't remember, he said like that blanket, we knew he'd been in the trunk because there was stuff in the seat, the back seat that wasn't there. So he'd kind of been in the trunk. So we just break off back and just go, because obviously she wasn't there. Now we know later that she was actually in the trunk the entire time when the first thing happened with the deputy fighting him and driving down the road. So everybody breaks up.
Hey, before you move on to that, just tell me, give me a good news. Did they put the dog on him to get him out of the car? Did the dog get a chance to bite down?
No, he
darn.
There were I think we had dogs out, but he wouldn't get out of the car. I don't remember if they busted the window or if he didn't roll it down. He wouldn't get out of the car when he was not compliant. And so the first guys that were there, basically they assist him out of the driver window. And so there were dogs there barking, but he didn't take off. So he didn't get bit.
Very nice way to describe that. They assisted him through the driver's window.
He was non-compliant. We assisted him out of the vehicle.
He did. And again, the window wasn't there. I doubt it was down. I think it probably assisted in opening the window too. And so, because I remember seeing him go out of the driver window. So we just break off, and everyone 40, 50 guys, and a Sepulpa officer found her at a tree line back in that neighborhood was on the edge of town. And so that's why we knew it'd be tough to get out of. And she's stuffed in a sleeping bag, and her underwear is tied around her neck. But she's alive. I mean, I'll tell you, I don't know how close it was when the helicopter got there, but I mean, he had her underwear was had tied around her neck, and obviously he'd had her for several hours, had done unspeakable, horrible things to her. This little 8-year-old girl.
Oh man.
So he goes, but why this is so that again, that was to me one of the most. The stakes were of all the stuff you get amped up, and we've been into things where you're just waiting for the gunshots to go off, but it had a different feel because it was just kind of, just the all night long doing this and trying to get this, and that's where this happened. We found her name is Monzi, which I normally wouldn't name victims' names, but she's exceptional, which I'll kind of get to at the end of the story. So. This guy, he's a repeat offender. He tries to change his appearance. He grows a beard, dyed his hair, fought the jailers going to court. In front of the jury, the guy took a water pitcher and hit the female prosecutor in the face, knocked her teeth out.
Oh, geez.
And again, just hoping that she wouldn't identify him, and doing this kind of things. And she went up there and she testified, described what he did to her.
How old was she at the time?
8 years old. And of course, he ended up getting 120 years in prison. And so Murph, the year you came and spoke at our conference, I wish we could have done this at the same time, but because of COVID, we couldn't. But every year, our association, I say every year, the president of the association, it's not one we do every year, but if we see exceptional valor, if there's one of those things that we see, then we will kind of recognize that. And there's a lot. And I'll tell you that story. There is a lot of, I think that I saw so many friends, again, Wayne going out there and doing that interview. Wayne wasn't even assigned with there. He gets back in town, calls in another jurisdiction outside of Tulsa County. How can I help? He does an interview, puts us on a suspect. I mean, so many people, what that citizen did, who we still don't know, the dispatcher documenting that, sending it out.
And you're talking about the citizen. You're talking about the one that called in the coloring book thing?
At the discount store, yeah.
Who knew something so small and insignificant like that would play a huge part?
And did that before
they knew
there was
anything.
Not the kidnapping. Yeah, just said, this is just kind of a guy's hide behind a coloring book. I don't like that. And so there were so many people that did that. And I don't know how close, Monzi, her name is Montserrat, but she goes by Monzi. I don't know how close it was, but, it was exceptional. However, all those people, we sign up for that. It makes your life kind of, it makes your career in life, kind of feel worth it. But Monzi didn't sign up for this at all. And so, that year, we recognized her as an exceptional valor with what she done, because since that time, she's written a book that to help victims about what's like to go through trauma. There's a YouTube reading of it. When we gave her the award, she met with a reporter that covered it that night and talked about what it was like. Wants to be a prosecutor someday, and so to me, that is her courage and how she could impact all those guys. There are still officers that go to see her family, go out to lunch with her. A lot of guys, they are still in contact with her. And so to circle back to one of the things we talked about is the morale in law enforcement. If you're rational and you're cops, like, why do I do this? All the crap with politicians and social media and all these influencers, what they're saying, why do it? And the reality we know, all of us know in public safety, is there are, in every community, there are people that they'd rape and molest every person they could, steal everything they can. And the only thing that stops them is the threat of getting caught and punished. They do not understand morality like we do. So if you want to say why, when I'm ever kind of talking about the morale, like why, you should ask the question, why am I doing this? That's why. I mean, those kind of people, I mean, it sucks for us and it's hard. But those, like that little girl, they need us. And that's why this cause is so important. I think that's, again, with the imaging, I mean, with the messaging that we see. And I'll tell you guys, I'm not trying to, I mean, not just to kind of blow up your skirt. What you guys are doing right now serves that mission. I mean, I think we're in a information war, and we kind of got our ass kicked a little bit. And I think what you guys do to get that out helps us kind of move that forward and makes our community safer. So we really need quality law enforcement, that next generation. It's very hard to recruit. It's hard to keep guys there, but they need us. I mean, if it's not us, who's going to be? So.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. It's amazing some of the comments we've gotten back from some of our listeners now for the past year and a half about the realization that law enforcement are really people. You know, they're moms and dads and their husbands and wives and brothers and sisters and all that goes along with that. And that's why we bring people in to tell the heroic stories of the rescues that go on out there, the bravery, the expertise, the commitment to duty, the honor, the sacrifice, how not only does it affect the law enforcement professionals, but their families, you know, because it becomes a way of life if you're doing your job correctly. And I do want to, normally we don't acknowledge the pieces of shit that you refer to, but this is public record, and this piece of shit's name is Michael Slatton. He's doing 120 years in prison, and I hope he enjoys having done to him what he did to that young girl. I hope that happens to him every day while he's in prison. I hope he never gets out.
They'll keep him segregated. They'll keep him from having the ride on the old Hershey Highway, as they say. But I'll tell you what, but Murphy, you sold this guy short. This piece of shit got 120 years plus another 40. He got another 40 for throwing excrement at sheriff's deputies, assaulting detention officers, and then attacking that prosecutor.
Yeah, I'd actually forgot that. He caught charges. So yeah, the 120 was what he'd done to Monzi.
Unbelievable.
And so yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, there's other charges, fighting the jailers and attacking. So.
Well, listen to this. You talk about trying to excuse his way out of it. The court heard Slatton apologize to the victim family, but he still claimed he was blacked out on pills given to him by a friend when the incident took place, and he could not remember anything.
Well, that's when he sits down and it hurts. It remembers every time.
And, you know, that's one of those things that if you look at the thing with so many offenders, now, again, this is all day long, horrendous sex crimes, but predatory offenders oftentimes inflate their courage to do these. I say courage, their willingness to do these crimes by drugs. They are so the drugs are not irrelevant. Now, again, he's an immoral piece of shit that should rot in hell and will, but those he
removes that final barrier to him committing that crime. What it does, it lowers his inhibitions and allows him to do it.
It assists him in doing what they can maintain restraint, not to do it because of getting caught. But when they actually can get high, then that again, remember he was the two things where he looked like he was on pills when he was high, when he was buying a coloring book, and when he was at that fast food place later on in the evening. And you're right, it lowers their restraint to where they can do what they have the desire to do. But that will never go down as a drug offense.
And it's as heroic as you guys' law enforcement actions were. The true hero is Monzi, and this is online. You can look it up. You can see the interview. Now, keep in mind, she was kidnapped at 8. 9 months later, so I'm assuming she was 9. Confronted her attacker in court. This piece of crap. So that's a heroic girl, and has taken her story and made something out of it, so she can help others. You want a lesson to learn? You want somebody to look up to? Look up to this young lady. Was she 14 years old now? It's just,
where does a 9-year-old get that internally to be able to do that? You know,
wow.
It just.
Well, and if you watch the online, the interview, when he gave her the award, the crime reporter who covered it that night, is now an anchor, actually went back and did a feature story and said, can I talk to you? And she said, she said, you can put my name out there. And she did an interview on camera, and she's she is so bright. And so that's, again, with she's impacted so many people. And again, it shows us, it can remind us kind of, why we do this. And she is, again, I love my profession. I love the men and women in law enforcement and public safety, but it's hard to get inspired more with all the people I work with than Monzi and what happened to her, what she's shown, and what she continues to show.
For our listeners, go check out her video. This is the news article. It's I think you could type in "teen at center of Tulsa Amber Alert" and find it on Google.
Yeah, and we'll put the link on our show page. The other thing, though, too, is I don't want to get biblical here, but it's kind of like you talk about why do we do this? Cops live for this kind of stuff. The ones that do it, it's like Isaiah 6:8, and I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And then I said, "Here I am, send
Absolutely.
me." How many cops that night raised their hand and said, "Here I am, send me"? Guys and girls, we're going. Not even my jurisdiction, not my problem. I work dope cases, but yet when stuff like this happens, everybody raises their hand and they go, "I will go, send me."
How many of them? Every one of them.
Every one of them.
Every one of them. And nobody stopped to ask what race she was. Nobody stopped to ask what her social status was. Nobody stopped to ask if she went to the right schools. Nobody stopped to ask, et cetera.
And what's funny is that is relevant to all these people in pop culture that could not be more irrelevant to people in public safety. A lot of times don't know, don't ask, don't care. And
right.
It's amazing to me there. So
the minute you say 8-year-old girl kidnapped broad daylight,
everybody goes.
It's like, what other information do you need? Let's saddle up and let's go.
Yeah. Well, like Dawson wasn't assigned he was a narc in Tulsa, and he heard about it. He says, "I want to go because I don't know Tulsa streets. Can I go with you?" And you know what? That helped because we weren't going to do consent encounters with just one person, so I could double up. I got a partner, and I had the radio, and I could go out there, and that's just what everybody does. It's not. We see it all the time, but when you sit back and reflect on it, and it's because of those peace officers. And look, peace officers and people holding the peace internally against evil been around for thousands of years. That's just kind of our calling now. And we've seen you lay off that and really it sucks for the profession, for us professionally right now. Officer violence, I think it increased 29% last year. That's on the rise, and that's horrible. But the real casualties of this are the innocent. It's people that can't protect themselves. That's who needs this. That's why it's so important. And I just appreciate your messaging, because that's kind of the threat besides criminal justice reform and how that's really tearing our society, where we could lose our country. The messaging is a very important part of that. And so that's why I think what you guys do is tremendous to get that information and that out there.
Thanks for saying that.
See, Murphy says me making fun of you is important to this country.
Yeah, if we could just get you to listen, quit interrupting everybody. Damn.
Hey, look how long I can go back. I will go back and tell you the long stretches of where he went on. Let me read you something, though. This is very interesting because I'm working on two books, but I'm reading this thing. It's called Thrillers, the 100 Must Reads. So there's 100 different chapters, and it's written by all of these authors. And they go back and they start from very early on, like Beowulf and the Minotaur, and they work their way up through current books. But there is one phrase I want to read, and it stuck out to me. I was just reading it this morning, and it comes from the guy who was talking about Beowulf, and we start talking about evil. The evils of this sad world are not always susceptible to analysis or negotiation. Some monsters are really monsters and just have to be taken down. That's why poets write, or used to write, epics honoring the warriors who do the job. There is no explain. You don't need to explain or rationalize this guy. He is evil simply because he's evil. And the sooner people realize there are people like this in the world, that there is no hand-holding or rationalizing or coddling that's going to make these guys productive members of society. These people are evil. And if you don't have law enforcement out there, I know Los Angeles just said, hey, the thin blue line is racist. Couldn't be farther from the truth. They don't like flying it there. Without that thin blue line, and it comes from the thin red line, what they talked about in World War I, holding the line. If without that thin blue line that separates order from chaos, what are we going to do then? Who does it fall upon then to provide order and keep, to your point, there's a lot of good people out there, but we also know that there's a small group of people out there, except for the fact that they get arrested or the threat of arrest or the law enforcement is there, they would commit these acts. It is that thin blue line. And when you remove it, you get Portland, you get Seattle, you get Atlanta, you get places like that.
Right. And again, the biggest victims are these communities and groups that they are purporting to protect. And it's just kind of a tragedy.
It's lawlessness. Lawlessness.
It absolutely is.
So,
and it's again, nothing new.
Well, but excellent job on that recovery, following through, persevering. Put somebody else first. That's what law enforcement does.
Well, I don't think that there's any way to top that. It's just, but I will tell you and I will tell you this too, and you'll appreciate this too, Brian. The biggest difference between being a prosecuting attorney and taking these cases through court, which is obviously important, right? But it's just, to your point, it's the people don't want to admit, but it is. It's like the guy you talked about, Dawson. It's the thrill of this hunt. It's like, let's go do this. It's like actually being there and making that difference in the field for those folks. There's no other feeling like it. There's no other adrenaline rush like that when you bring the bad guy or bad girl in, when you recover the child. There's no amount of paperwork or stuff later that can give you that feeling from when you're out there and you made an impact in somebody's life.
Well, and I'll tell you one of the ways. There's an easy way. It's not about just the thrill of heroism. Or it's nothing like this. Like, I equate it to, winning a championship. And here's a good way to tell. Here's a way to tell if you truly bleed public safety. If you hear, like with you guys, and I'm telling the story, and I can see it on video, the story is pissing you off, and then and so think about this. If you hear about a case in California of some asshole victimizing people, and he gets acquitted. If that infuriates you, and in your case, that tells you what drives you. And if you hear that a bad guy got it, and you're like, man, that absolutely, you can see that. And so it's not about it. Look, it's absolutely about being part of the cause, but it's not about your own. It's not about what you do. And so it's just kind of joining in to say, that's what I'm about. And that's what, really, I say lucky. Hell, I'm blessed. You don't get much time on this earth. And the fact I get to work in public safety with, look, and I'll tell you this, Murph, of all the people, is there a bunch of ribbing and joking and hazing in law enforcement? Yes. DEA may be the best at it. They are some of...
That's about the only thing they're good at.
But I'll tell you, that group, and I've been lucky enough to, like Murph, you go around, and it's not just people around here. You go to other states and teach and meet those people. We're all the same. We don't go to the same academy schools, different parts of the country. It doesn't matter what this socio-economic or political landscape is. We get people from Northern California, San Francisco, get those they are exactly like it is just some warrior class calling that people have. And I think it's just crucial to our civilization and protection of everybody in the order that we have.
And it's true in other countries. We bring on guests from other countries, and it's the same there. They're just want to help people. It's as simple as that. It's not all this rhetoric that's going on now. There's nothing self-serving about it. You just want to help others.
Well, let's now kind of bring this full circle, because let's talk about what you're doing now. So you were an agent for how long?
8.5 years.
So you did 8 years prosecuting attorney, 8 years as an agent. What made you then make the jump back to what you're doing now? What was the tipping point for you?
Well, I've had two jumps since then. So in 2014, my well, I say my boss, my former boss, he won an election as district attorney in Wayne's district in that area, 3 counties that border as suburban Tulsa. He asked me to be his first assistant. I wasn't looking to leave being an agent. It was just kind of that DA was very adverse to law enforcement, and I knew the people up there. I worked a lot of cases up there, and he asked me to kind of come back and be his first assistant and do that. So work some of the interdiction cases, or prosecute the interdiction cases, forfeitures, because we had a interstate that went through there as well. So I went and did that for 7 years, and then just about exactly a year ago, the current director of the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics, Donnie Anderson, he was not there when I left. He was appointed director, asked me to come back, and so now I'm at the deputy director at back at the bureau. So and I kept my law enforcement credentials active the whole time I was assistant DA. I was, in case the shit hit the fan, I was not going to be the nerd prosecutor and a windbreaker, and it's amazing how, I'll tell you. So, I've been with these guys on the Marshall Squad. I went to the rifle and SWAT schools with them, and I go back to some like one of the guys in the car, James Williard. He was in Pryor as a detective, and I go to visit him, and that's one of the offices. And he's got some short barrel suppressed rifle in his office with a nice optic. What does anybody do? Freaking play with it. And I pick it up. And he's, whoa, that's Warden. That's loaded, Brian. I'm like, bitch, I've been to the same carbine school. Well, you're a prosecutor now. I'm like, are you? Because I wear a tie, I can't hold. Are you kidding me? And then it's like, I remember the first week I'm back in court, and we got to cover dockets, and someone's gone. And there's a juvenile, like a 14-year-old juvenile. And they're like, we need a deputy in here because we're gonna have a delinquent in here. I'm like, are you shit? I've been with the marshals, and now I can't even be in a courtroom with a freaking 14-year-old kid. And so I kept my law enforcement credentials, but so I'm back to having an official gun and badge, and back and classified as an agent. But of course now I've got a lot more administrative things that happen.
Yeah.
And when I go out there on deals, I feel alive, but that's I've got to struggle to do that every day. So,
are you still a special assistant U.S. attorney?
No. So that was a gig I had when I was in the DA's office. I was a cross-deputized special, SASA, which is Special Assistant United States Attorney. And I got to know a lot of the people there in the U.S. Attorney's office in Tulsa. A lot of just made good connections. But that was an appointment I had with my roles as an assistant DA.
Yeah, and for our listeners, that means that he could prosecute cases in federal court as well as state court.
Right.
To get that cross designation.
And get to cross-examine himself. Your Honor, I call myself.
That's right. No, I would say no further questions. That was a brilliant direct if it was me.
Now you've written, you've been involved in quite a bit of writing, and you keep mentioning the Fourth Amendment here, which is phenomenal. But there's one book that you wrote that made the #1 bestseller list, isn't it?
Yes, it was.
Morgan mentioned it earlier, but can you tell us about it again?
Yeah, so I've got a book. It's Injustice for All: The Familiar Fallacies of Criminal Justice Reform. And if the listeners hasn't picked up, I'm not a fan of criminal justice reform. And so what happened is I made a run through the leadership of our...
Well, wait a minute. You can't just say that. I mean, as you're saying that, you got to say why. You say you're not a big fan of criminal justice reform. Make sure you answer the why in this.
I will. So, so we had, when I went through the leadership of of our state narcotics association, where Wayne is just the past president. Well, I held a SWAT meeting for our board members in terms of the training, what we're going to do, and going forward, and growth of the agency or the growth of the association. And one of the biggest threats we had was the narratives against law enforcement and public safety. And that's really kind of when these reform movements were kind of gaining steam, and whether it's like billionaires giving money to causes and these offshoots of NGOs just dealing with all of that. And a little bit from the traditional libertarians that are kind of like legalizing drugs, they kind of, it's a weird kind of an odd marriage. So obviously I'm going with our association, kind of going to legislatures, pending laws, and dealing with some of those things. And you see all of the bullshit in terms of what these people are doing. So I've kind of been seeing that, dealing with that for a year or two with the association. So my wife and I go on vacation, and don't get to read. I read enough as a lawyer that reading recreationally just doesn't sound that fun because I do it all day. So she and I go on an anniversary trip, just like a cabin we go to every year. And I've always kind of been. I love the libertarian economic thought with whether it's just kind of my geek out thing. And one of the guys is a guy named Frederick Hayek, and he wrote a book that I read about, and people mention it. So I found that at the bookstore, bought it. I'm going to read that. Well, his whole book, it's called The Road to Serfdom, but essentially post World War II, it was basically what he called the apparatus, intellectual left, the media and the entertainment industry. They were pushing a narrative that Nazi was failed capitalism, how they pushed that on America, and the plan of doing this, and how if we continue this, we're going to be in serfdom. And I'm like, well, and so I that's interesting. So I read this, and I'm like, every single playbook they have for pushing these ridiculous narratives, redefining words, perpetuating a myth. All the things go through there. The use of propaganda. I read that. I'm like, holy hell! This is exactly what they're saying at legislative and with the media to push these false narratives on criminal justice reform. So that night, we're making margarita. I told my wife, who's a former prosecutor, I said, hey, it's exactly the same damn thing that I'm seeing. Hayek wrote this book in the 40s. It's exactly the same way. She's like, why don't you write a book? I'm like, but you know what? I will. So the next morning I got up, I started outlining it, did that, and then essentially tried to, and again, I don't want to just kind of be my thoughts on the world. I've got about 300 sources. I mean, the data in history is on the side of showing the importance of enforcement. And so anyway, I just wrote the book and released it. I wanted to get it done at the end of 2020. I got the final manuscript into the copy editor like on the 30th, actually. And so my wife, I made a margarita with her again, just kind of to capstone that off after like 14 months, and released it in March. And then it just on Amazon went to the number one bestseller, and it's been again, it's and again, you went through some of the chapters. There's a lot of, again, I wanted to start from scratch. If you're going to make the case for enforcement and for drug enforcement, you kind of have to start with, why do we even have laws? What society? Back to cavemen and rules. And that's kind of the history of thought, which is a couple of chapters, which a lot of knuckle draggers aren't kind of into. Get in about chapter 4, that's where it kind of gets into our universe and kind of what we've seen. So, and again, I won't say that I knew everything in there. I've been around long enough. I know this, you see these politicians, they're like, oh, he doesn't need jail. He needs rehab. Rehab works. Well, we know that's BS. So, these guys are in and out of rehab. What is that? Well, you look and there's no you look at this, there's no definition of rehab. Is it talking to your cat? Well, no one knows. And so, and works is like part of the propaganda. What does work mean? Well, they get to define it. Is it if you start treatment, start and finish, and do aftercare, start, finish, do aftercare, don't get arrested in 3 years. And we see with that DOJ study, we have no idea how much, what rehab is or how often it works.
Right. So go back to the initial part. Which part of, when you say you're not a big fan of criminal justice reform, is this what you're talking about, or is there something a little bit more behind it?
No, all of the false narratives on law enforcement, the bias in policing, in prosecuting, the myth that there are first offense drug offenders, this ridiculous idea that cost of incarceration. Okay, that's a thing. That's just a made up number. It sounds good. Libertarians use it to say what they'll save money, but cost of incarceration, it's just a made up pretend number. And so to give you one example, so I'm writing the manuscript, and I pull the numbers from our Department of Corrections website, and at the time we're one of the cheapest in the nation. Minimum security costs $14,000. Maximum costs $28,000 a year. 2 months later, a buddy of mine's going to do a talk at a law school there and try to ambush him on prison overcrowding. I pull some stuff in the manuscript, and I go back to the website, and I look, and minimum went from $14,000 to $17,000 a year, and maximum from $28,000 to $33,000, went up $5,000 a year. Like, what in 2 months? What the hell happened? Well, we had the largest commutation of prisoners in U.S. history, pushed by people from the right. We should do this. So so we do it to save money. Well, all that happened so all we did was just because few people in prison, the Department of Corrections want same budget. What do? They just raise the pretend number it costs to incarcerate them. So basically, and I mean, I'm not that smart. That evades detection of everybody. But what happened was we let people out of prison that victimize other people for the sole purpose of saving money. All we did was raise the pretend number of what the costs of incarceration are. And that's juxtaposed against, let's spend money on treatment. Well, we don't know what treatment works, but University of Boston has done a study that, when somebody it takes on average 6.9 treatment episodes for sustained sobriety. So that's one thing we can measure. But when 60 to 70% of people they drop out of treatment within a couple of months. All right. When you don't count 80% of the people that get out and don't complete it when you calculate your success rate, then all of a sudden your numbers look a lot better. And so again, the propaganda put out there to the public is we don't need incarceration, we need treatment.
But the problem is they redefine success as being about they followed the process as opposed to what's the outcome.
Right. Well,
we get the outcome we want, but we followed the process. He went to rehab, and to your point, well, what does rehab mean?
What does rehab mean? And again, wouldn't it be nice? It's like, I'm a big fan of Thomas Sowell, but there's a way of looking at the world. There are no utopian solutions. There are options, and they have consequences. It usually is with consequence sucks less. It would be nice if you could let people out of prison and they didn't victimize other people. We've talked about that DOJ study. I mean, on average, 46% get arrested in a year.
But it's Pollyannic thinking. You gotta have this Pollyannic thinking to think that, they've been rehabilitated, they're not going to go out and commit crime, which the data, again, everybody says trust the science. Well, let's go back and trust the data then. The data clearly indicate that this is going to happen again, high probability. And then what people forget to factor, what's the cost to society? You say, here's the cost to incarcerate. What's the cost to Monzi? What's the cost to her family? What's the cost to that community just for that one offense?
I mean, it's one of those things that when you let somebody out and they steal someone else's shit, what that is, that's not a line item at the budget because insurance rates go up, and so all of those, but they don't see that there. And so you're right. There are consequences. And the thing is, if you let people out of prison, they victimize other people, period. I mean,
and you know what an example of that is? I don't want to hear anybody bitch about how much they're paying at the stores or why certain stores are closing. You know why? Because these gangs, organized retail theft that are going and basically cleaning out stores, nobody's stopping up, nobody's arresting them. At the end of the day, who pays for that? We do. They jack up our prices. We pay more for it so that somebody else doesn't have to suffer the consequences.
Yep, that's exactly right. And so it's, again, all the people that do pay for the stuff have to pay more to account for those that steal it. And again, since we've decriminalized, we've had a little kind of run here in Oklahoma. They did it by state question. It's kind of a long story, but we have seen retail theft has gone up significantly on surveys and everything with the Retailers Association saying all that happens. Inventory loss in one chain, inventory loss tripled after we decriminalized that. Now, it wasn't just the property crime, because the other people said, well, it was a misdemeanor. Shoplifting was a misdemeanor before, still a misdemeanor. So with the fact we raised it to make more things misdemeanor, that didn't affect it one bit. And I'm like, well, that assumes that crimes happen in a vacuum. We also decriminalize drug use to a perpetual misdemeanor. And when you look for thousands of years, when you remove a consequence, that behavior increases. And when drug use increases, drug-related crime increases, period.
And how do you support your $100 a day heroin habit like you talked off about saying? Yeah. You got to go steal stuff.
And they most often steal from their families. I mean, that's not even reported. I mean, most drug offenders steal from their grandparents and parents, and they won't report it. And that has been off. I mean, it's only, they will take advantage of all their family. And all of them, they're surrounded by good-meaning enabling people, but that's just kind of what you see.
So let's talk about one more thing before we ask you about, you said, not that there's anything funny about the death penalty, but you had a funny story around a death penalty case. But let's talk real quick too, final thing, because we hear all the time about the legalization of marijuana, about how it's going to decriminalize it. It's going to put the cartels out of business. What's your thought? What's your experience when it comes to that?
Well, I will tell us that everything that's been promised by reformers for legalization, the opposite has happened. So we've done that in Oklahoma. And so, look, when I listen to y'all's podcast, and I'm a little bit kind of nervous because you got Murph and these DEA guys, and the guys that got Chapo and Paul. I mean, they're badasses. Like, they got 800 pounds of coke in a van. I'm like, damn. Well, I'll tell you right now, we have legalized marijuana, and our scheme doesn't regulate it's very loose in regulating the growers. So right now in Oklahoma, we have, I think, 4 times the wholesale growers than retail dispensaries. Well, there's no economic model in history. You can have more wholesalers than retailers. And we just we had some, again, what I do now, I prepare reports to the legislature for budgeting. That's kind of coming up. And we talked about some of the things we did. And so last year, we see with the plants we seize, and these plants are so, I mean, again, when I started, the good weed from Mexico was 3% THC.
Yeah.
Tetrahydrocannabinol, the compound they're chasing to cause a euphoria dopamine dump. Okay, 3% THC. It's well in excess of 20% now. Yep. So what that means is smoking a joint today is like smoking 7 from 1996. But what we're seeing is in these plants, they really indoor, they produce these fat buds are so fat the stalks can't hold them up. They got to have these little tomato cage cones on them. Just the marijuana plants we seized last year in our agency would have made. I did the math here for the legislature. Last year we seized 28,000 pounds of processed marijuana from these grows, which at the ONDCP Office of National Control Drug Policy, they've got an estimate of 0.46 grams for a joint. Let's round it up to 5, make it a little bit fat. Even with that raw weed seizure of processed weed is 26 million joints for our card holders. With the plants, it was 222,000 plants with a modest output. Again, these are fatter ones that do this. That would be 201 million joints, which would be a for every Oklahoman, that's a joint. That's just what we seize, not the other stuff. So we have imported the cartel and organized crime into Oklahoma. They use fronts. They have hired lawyers. It is off the charts. When we do an eradication, we've done 2 wires. They've been in foreign languages, Mandarin and in Fujianese. It's been very difficult for us. When they have multiple grows involved with these organized crime grows, we mobilized 60 National Guard people and dump trucks to take all the weed we're processing from these grows. So what's happened is, unlike my entire career, dope has been a source gang. You got who's the plug? That's you got to go between an unwitting, you got to know the source. They're making so much weed here now that they've got to find ways to offload it all across the country. They don't even mess around with Oklahoma selling it here on these wires because they're doing that. So what's going to happen is 2 things happen. One, there will be an effort to normalize it, to increase the demand. And we're seeing that they would like to have that, with children. And so, so what we'll see is an effort. That's why I see the packaging. Edibles are so big now, the concentrates.
Gummies, all the different colors.
So at a dispensary, we have no limits on the concentration. So, and I'll kind of put this in perspective. So one of our inspection agents goes to a dispensary, sees the gummy worms, a medication, mind you, gummy worm, rainbow box, 500 milligrams per gummy. There was 20 gummies, says 10,000 milligrams. So to put that in perspective, okay, THC is actually a Schedule 3, which means you can get a prescription for it, synthetically made. Not you're not going to go to Walgreens and get a rolling paper and some purple kush to smoke, but in a regulated milligram. It's called Marinol. All right, it's for narcolepsy, appetite suppressant. It's not used very often, but it can be in a theory. That's Marinol, generic dronabinol. It's all insider trading, but here's the deal. One of those Marinol tablets is 2.5 milligrams. Recommended daily dose by the FDA is 2 tablets per day, 5 milligrams a day. One 500 milligram gummy is like taking 3 months and 10 days of your Marinol tablets all at once. And so, and what we've seen is like before legalization in Oklahoma, we averaged 5 poison control, not all overdoses. Poison control averaged 5 pediatric 0 to 5 overdoses on cannabis a year. In 2022, they had 269. That's a 53.8% increase in pediatric overdoses. The kids going in the pantry, seeing the edibles, and eating the candy. So again,
I'd say, I'm sorry, that's. I mean, I don't want to call you out on your math, but if you went from 5, you said to how many? 200.
So we went from, they were average before legalization. The pediatric overdoses in Oklahoma poison control averaged 5 per year. In 2022, we had 269.
No, that's more than 50%. You're talking about like a 5,000.
53-fold.
Oh, 53-fold. I thought you said 53%.
No.
Yeah, 53.
Oh, that'd be like, was that 5,000? I don't know. It's 53-fold increase.
Well, yeah, 53. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like a 5,000% increase.
So again, wouldn't it be nice if we could and again, because of the normalization of it that happens, that I just wish with all the advocates would say, look, here's kids taking the gummies, that's just part of freedom. If they acknowledge that, but they won't acknowledge those kind of things because these changes have impacts. It is visibly changing my state right now with people buying up land for out-of-state interests, overseas interests. I think we have 13 different organized crime 13 countries, organized crime syndicates have come in here and done this. There's a labor trafficking. They're just producing it. And so...
and one thing begets another. It's broken window theories. If you allow marijuana to exist, marijuana is a cash crop. You're right. What else do you get with that? You get all the things you're talking about.
This can't be because all the proponents of legalization said it's going to do away with crime. I mean, what the hell's wrong with you guys in Oklahoma?
Yeah. Look, Rocky Mountain, Colorado's ahead of us in this, so we're fastly catching up. Their HIDA groups, Rocky Mountain HIDA, did a report on the impact of legalization. Every indicator, again, every promise that's been made by legalization, by libertarians and kind of the social justice advocates alike, everyone has proved to be false. The opposite has happened.
I had a discussion with one of our listeners, and it was respectful. We just said, hey, show me some stats. I went and pulled the stats from Colorado. Coroner's office, where they looked at death certificates and they looked at the suicides, the increase in suicide rate for teen, where there was elevated levels of THC in their system, same thing, increased like 200%. You don't get anything like this without a consequence. With every action, there is an equal reaction. And so when you legalize this stuff, people think, they get the wrong impression. They go, you guys are just against weed. No, what we're against is the severe impacts to society that because nobody thought far enough ahead, you wanted something so bad without thinking downstream, what's going to happen with this? What's going to happen with the people who grow it? To your point, now that you've got 13 different organized crime groups in your state, what else is going on in your state? What's the cost of human trafficking? What's the cost of child abduction? What's the cost of drug ending? I can guarantee you right now, we did a thing when I was on the Community Policing Committee for the International Association of Chiefs of Police. We brought in Colorado and Washington State Patrol. John Batiste is a buddy of mine, was the colonel, the head of the Washington State Patrol. When they legalized it out there, he said our drug driving took a significant spike upwards because it was legal.
I think it doubled in Washington. The fatality accidents of where they popped off for THC doubled. And just realize that if you do that there will be, again, if you want to say, look, running over Meemaw, you run her down because you're high on weed. That's the cost of me being able to get high. Say it, but quit lying about it. I mean, that's the thing, is realize there is a consequence to it. And that's the direct results that we have. And so, again, right after legalization, we have a 53-fold increase in kids some are on ventilators. And the thing is, because think how much they're taking at one time. And so, again, and
the other thing too is here's the other thing too. If you want to package it so that when they look at it, they realize the impact they're about to get. Don't don't dress it up like gummy worms, like stuff that they're used to that comes out of a candy store, that if they eat it, the worst thing they happen is get an upset stomach. They get sick. This shit kills them.
It's the same way with synthetic marijuana out and when Javier was running the DEA office in San Francisco, he made that one of his priorities was to address the shops that selling synthetic as bath salts is all it is, but they could label it as something else.
And hey, and that's a great point because again, kind of go back to our reform. Let's talk about the history of success. You mentioned the synthetic cannabinoids, the bath salts, and that was the bath salts were kind of a stimulant. Synthetic cannabinoids they would put on leafy matter, sell as like incense and smoke that kind of shit. There were helicopters landing in hospitals. That was a thing in the news all the time. It's gone. What happened? DEA scheduled it by administrative rule. A lot of states use the Synthetic Control Act. It wasn't actually, it was synthetic. You know what we did? The convenience store selling it, we made it suck to give that to kids. And guess what? It stopped. There's a history of success with enforcement with meth labs, the synthetic cannabinoids. And again, we solved it in public safety. It wasn't some think tank jackass from a student union. See, I'm not getting wound up. But it was the law enforcement that had the knowledge. And you know what? All these freaking thinkers in public, they don't have to jack with kids at meth labs because we took care of it. They don't have to deal with helicopters landing, picking up kids at high schools who are taking this kind of stuff. They can buy it at a convenience store because law enforcement came up with a solution. We did it by rule. We enforced the rule. And again, we made it suck to do that. And guess what? They quit doing it. I mean, even the most, these are deviants we're talking about, but even the craziest, most deviant person, if you kick them in the nuts, figuratively, they don't want to get kicked in the nuts. And if we do that, and that's just basic human behavior. So there's a long track record of success with enforcement and the debacles of laying off. That's going to get kind of back to the book again, and it's the example you have right there. Because
I can see you running for office. Your campaign slogan: "We're going to kick them in the nuts."
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
I don't know. We got to bring it back so we can see if we can get him to come out of his shell and tell us what he really thinks about
I'm
this.
telling you, it only took us 3.5 hours to get an opinion out of this guy.
What's funny is every time I start doing this, I say to myself, "Here's the deal." I told myself,
"Oh yeah, it's like the second day in the academy. Now I'm going to keep quiet."
I'm gonna, and I speak, and I now look, if it's like a church group, I'll be pretty good. Again, if my mother-in-law listens, Myrna, I'm sorry, she heard me cuss on here. It wouldn't seem legit, so I was told myself if my mother-in-law listens, but it just kind of comes out, and I start.
I have the mother-in-law version that we beep out all the profanity.
That'll be a lot of editing. But I start talking, because I start sweating and getting amped up because I really sincerely. We've all seen it. This is not news. It's not like now sometimes the numbers shock people. There ain't a public safety professional yet, cop or prosecutor, you can get these facts to like, oh my holy hell, I did not know that. But they knew that rehab was a farce and how it was pitched out there as a solution by people wanting to make money and say, oh, well, bill your insurance for rehab. But they just didn't know kind of the numbers behind it. So there's the science again. Talk about weed. There's a whole body of science with National Academy of Sciences on the use of cannabis and schizophrenia, psychosis, suicidal ideation, depression, all those things. But it doesn't get play in there. I mean, what does the media do? A freaking anecdote. Some mom that says, "Oh, it helped my cancer," or something like that. It's
but they ignore the facts. Which you go back again. This goes back to Colorado. Look at the increase of THC content. Look at the increase of suicidal ideation. The trips to ER. I'll tell you what. One way to get people to change their views of stuff is put them out in the field to where they've got to go investigate the cases. To where they have to go. The worst thing that sucked about being a state trooper or being a detective is going and knocking on somebody's door at 2:00 in the morning to give them the worst news they're probably ever going to get in their life. Somebody died. And then the question is, why? Why my kid? Why did this have to happen? Could answer the how, the what, the when, the where. Never had an answer for the why.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, I respect the guys that give death notifications. I've never had to do that. Now, a lot of meeting with victims' families in private, but when you see their pain. It's genuine, and it is horrible to do. And it is absolutely senseless in terms of why it happens. And so
I had to do 3 in 1 week that involved 7 deaths. total.
Man.
And it's like, I never want to do that again. And the military people, friend of mine, they lost their son over in Iraq, IED. Military, anytime the military shows up in Class A uniforms, it's never good news, And so it's just, Murph, you know it too. I mean, it's just like when you're down in Columbia, dealing with all of the families of the cops who got killed, all the funerals you went to. You want to make changes in policy, make these policymakers go out into the field where it's really happening and see the downstream, the real effects of the policies you want to put in place. Go visit that house with the kid whose mom and dad are so strung out they can't do anything, or the kid who's just overdosed for the third time and was brought back with Narcan. How about Steve this weekend? Mike Chapman up here. We just had 2 more fentanyl poisonings over the weekend.
Well, it's just like you said at the very beginning, Brian, about that first judge you worked with. He told you, get out of the ivory tower, go see the real world. And that's what the people that are making these decisions, that are supporting this, that's what they need to see.
Let's lighten the load here a little bit. Tell us a funny story about the death penalty.
That's okay.
That's really good.
Oh, it is. I mean, it can. So
there's a transition for you.
Yeah. So I think it was my second death penalty. I've done 3, but so it was a horrible case where it's all over. An old couple was killed, stabbed to death by a guy that knew him. Basically, the Social Security check came in, they cashed it, and he wanted it for beer money. He had one little pocket knife. He stabbed the female victim 41 times, none individually fatal. She actually collectively bled to death. She was in a wheelchair. We know she was upright and moved. 2 different stabbing incidents because there were some defensive wounds. She put her hands on her leg. The reconstructionist could time. The blood trickled down her leg. Then when it changed direction, she fell out and crawled. The other guy, he weighed 110 pounds in a walker. He was stabbed 7 times. Could confirm all with the same blade except one, which is in his chest, which is probably the guy moving the knife back and forth in his chest, kind of to kill him. He tried to make a break for it. And so we have this death penalty trial. Now, we actually made the case because the defendant's fingerprint, a bloody fingerprint they got with luminol, was actually above one of the bodies. Now, he took the stand and said that I just came over there. I didn't think you guys would believe me, so I checked on him and I headed out and burned my clothes, which is some of the other evidence that we had.
That's what everybody does, right?
Oh, yeah. So that's what he said, and he tried to blame it on somebody else. We put on the trial.
Yeah, like, that wasn't my fingerprint. That was somebody else's fingerprint.
He mentioned the other guy that had done it, and so that's kind of the. And we the only time I've ever had a jury they deadlock was one holdout on guilt innocence. And when he taken the stand and told the story and said, "I've never had a knife. I never carry a knife. I've never had a knife," and so that became kind of a thing. So the jury actually gets sequestered and put in a hotel overnight. Like, they can't talk to anybody. I've never had that happen where the judge, they're like, we're not going to get it tonight. But they go back, got to take them to a hotel, bus them there. They come back. And then I don't know. Within like 30 minutes, even before the morning, would be the mid-morning break, they come back and find him guilty. The one holdout, we talked to jurors later. She just didn't want to have to decide death. And so that's where we're at. Well, in a death penalty case, you go into the first, you just got guilt innocence. They did it. Second phase it's the piece of shit phase. You show everything he's done. Okay, there has to be what's called an aggravating circumstance. It's like a whole nother trial. You have like it's called a bill of particulars. It's like your charging document for why he should get that. It could be, is it heinous, atrocious, cruel? Is it a risk of death to more than one person? We have that. We have a prior violent felony. We have to cover up another felony. We have almost all of them. Well, you read his history. And there's this one old man, and he's like just the stereotypical old guy, got his little belly, and he's on the back row. And I go to read the bill of particulars about the rape. He had a manslaughter case. He killed a guy in Arizona, and a rape, a robbery.
Did it use a knife?
Yeah, he did use a knife there. This guy
I
never
thought
had
he
a
didn't
knife.
have a knife.
Oh yeah, he never had a knife. So this old man, and he is just there, and just you can just see it, like he's crossing his arms and he's pissed, and his belly's out there, and they're kind of resting on his belly. So the first victim, we found the rape victim. He raped when she was 16, but she's first one out of the gate. And again, this is his whole backdrop, and so. in state court, unlike federal, you can leave the lectern and move around. Victims don't want to; they want to lock eyes with you, even cops. So you kind of move over by the jury. And of course, the thing about a trial is it's kind of weird because you have this pretend dialogue, like you don't know the answers, but I do. So I do this examination with her. I'm right, but I'm like leaning up against the jury, the little half wall in front of the jury, so she'll be looking kind of towards them. I'm not going to tell her to look at them. I mean, this is mortifying to her. But I said, so, as she's describing raping, he said that he's raping her and holding a knife to her throat. Again, this guy never had a knife. And he says, he's raping me and he's got a knife to my throat, raping me. And I won't say her name. I said, and I said, so and again, when you want to kind of drive the point home, you, in your question, repeat that fact. So I'm like, so as he's raping you with a knife to your throat, do you say anything to him? And she says, yes. And I said, well, what'd you say to him as he's holding the knife to your there's a knife at your throat raping you? I said, look, I'm not on the pill. Please don't come inside me. I don't want to get pregnant. I said, okay. After you pleaded with him that and the knife in your throat, did he say anything? And she says, yes. I said, what did he say? She said, he just laughed and said, name it after me, bitch. And so right when that happens, and I'm setting up this kind of, at that point, that old man who can't hear, it's a Southern courtroom, he just screams out, Jesus Christ, and just, what is that, man? And I lock up. I'm like, oh God, what do I do? And so, and the funny part is everybody ignored it. Me, the judge, no one knew what to do. And it's not like, what's the defense lawyer going to do? Who's a decent guy. He'd play the hand he's dealt.
Yeah, but if he objects to it, he's only going to draw the point home even more.
What's he going to say? Your Honor, may the record reflect the testimony against my client was so inflammatory. Jury number 6 screamed, Jesus Christ. And so... so anyway, so we go through that and again, but it's like one of those, you hear something, I don't know, look ahead and what to do. And it just, everybody ignores it because no one ever seen that before. I always want to check that transcript and kind of see if right in the middle it says, juror number 6, Jesus Christ, exclamation point,
Did you have to look at the defendant?
No, I was looking at my victim and at that point, I'll be honest with you, it scared me. Because I'd never seen that. I say scared me, just startled me. Oh my God, this, because they make a record, pick apart everything in a death penalty case, and they bring in
no admonishment from the judge, like keep your opinions to yourself or anything like that.
No one says anything. I think it surprised everybody, and we just all, including me, and I vapor locked for a second, looking ahead, I don't want to look anywhere else because I don't know where to look. And so after a few seconds, I just kind of go, and what happened next? I just kind of go into that. So.
Oh, man.
So what was the outcome of the penalty phase?
Oh, they gave him death, yeah.
What else could it be?
Oh, yeah. Now, again, there was a same holdout that didn't want to find guilty thinking of going into that, but ultimately, we had 11 that said, I ain't voting for anything but death on this. And so it was they were out a while and they came back and gave the death penalty.
Wow.
Has the death penalty been exercised against him yet?
He died in prison before it happened. So
the chicken shit.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
natural causes, or did he have help?
No.
Was he assisted in some way?
He was in Oklahoma. The death row is in some kind of underground. It's the special, they call it H block at our maximum security prison, and so he was down there. And part of it is it takes so long with all the appeals, maybe 10, 15 years, and he was an older guy. And so...
So quick thing, you'll appreciate this. Remember the case down in Georgia, the guy who appealed the death penalty by saying, hey, look, it's cruel and unusual because I was an IV drug user and the drugs are going to hurt my veins and you can't give me the needle. And
no, I've not heard that one, no.
You should go, that was actually the guy that was involved in our robberies. I was in Atlanta testifying at a grand jury, a guy named Michael Nance. And so the Supreme Court ruled on it. They said, no, look, you can kill him. You just can't kill him with the needle. You got to come up with something else. He wanted the firing squad. Well, we don't have a firing squad in Georgia. We had one in Utah. Gary Gilmore was the first guy executed. But you're talking about stories about, testifying. I learned that one of the U.S. attorneys, AUSAs, came out there and he's laughing, and they're doing a case. I think it's a robbery case, but a guy was robbing a place, came out, stabbed somebody. They take it federal because of some other violations this guy has. He's got a gun, got a knife. But anyway, they're interviewing, and their witness is like an 83-year-old, southernly black gentleman, bow tie, just very nice, but he's old, got a cane, and he's their star witness. And they're asking him questions just like, so the defense attorney gets his chance during trial. So you're telling me from, to your point, you're reinforcing from a distance of 100 blocks away, you, Mr. Jones, an 83-year-old man, your prescription is this. You saw my client do this. Yes. You saw him do this. Yes. Mr. Jones, just exactly how far you can see. Can you see? He looks and he goes, well, I can see the sun. How far is that?
Good answer. Good answer.
You just got what's your response to that? Well, it was game over for that. He's laughing. He said that was the quickest verdict he's gotten in a trial in like 10 years,
Well, I remember we have a lot of cases. We have several agents that were bilingual, and they spoke Spanish first, but they learn English at 4 or 5 years old, and they have no accent. They don't realize it, and so just some people that in America were spoiled with all English. They don't understand a truly bilingual person. So defense lawyers are like, they're saying he said this to me, and this is what this wiretap call means, blah blah blah. And defense lawyers, are you certified to speak Spanish? As if there's some kind of certification. There's one for translators to be, but and he's like, no. So you're not certified? How can we know? And he said, sir, I'm not certified to speak English either, but I learned that language after Spanish. I know Spanish better. And it like this.
Yeah. Well, the balloon deflates.
Yeah.
What's the first rule of lawyering in court? You never ask a question you don't already know the answer to, right?
Yeah.
That's true.
Cross-examining, there was a case I had, there was a meth lab case. And I was a prosecutor. I went to the bureau the first time in the legal division, and another prosecutor's going the case to jury trial. And the guy had all kinds of priors, would have gone life without parole with this meth lab. And so they brought me back because what happens is his girlfriend says it's all mine. The whole lab's mine. We know it. I mean, he had his hand on a spatula with a wet pile of dope when they hit the door. But she said, all mine and everything. Well, they intercept a call. I say intercept. It's on the jail recording. And the undersheriff says, hey, you may want to know this. And she says basically something like, you guys they left her in jail. Like, you better bond me out or I'm not going to do what I said I was going to do and testifying against Jerry. And so I call her over there and I bring her over there. I can't remember her name, but I said, and I, as a prosecutor, I'm interviewing her with one officer there. And I said, she tells me it wasn't hers. And I said, well, was it Jerry's meth lab? And she looks down, looks back up and looks like, I don't want to answer that question. Okay, Brian. I'm like, okay. But she says it's not hers. Well, they go to trial later and she goes up and testifies and her kids had gone in custody. And so, she takes a stand and they call me in rebuttal to impeach her. So then this defense lawyer who I knew goes up and I just go through this whole conversation. I typed out a summary in the file and I do this and put it in there. And, again, in cross-examination, you can control the witnesses and just say, isn't this true? Isn't this true? Yes, yes. Make them say and kind of bail. Hopefully the prosecutor will kind of come back and redirect and clean that up. But she says, so you prosecuted 700 drug cases, yes, 300 meth labs in your career? Yes, I have. And she goes through all this. And you remember all of these things with just the details and all these things, this one case, basically saying, I did so many, how could I recall this? And I said, yes. And she goes through and she's asking the questions and she should have just gone and say, okay, I'm done. And then made it say for argument, like, how do you remember that? But she says, and can you tell the jury how you can remember that? And I said, absolutely. And I looked at the jury and I said, there's a few things that they had a child in the home. And look, I've had a lot of methamphetamine cases other than interdiction cases off the interstate shipments. This is one of the largest, if not the largest meth case we had that was locally produced in the lab. So the significance of the case, of all the ones I had, is very significant. Number two, there was a child in the home that was under 3. And if you know anything about off gases and meth labs, they're heavier than air. They go to the bottom. And so because children have higher respiration rates, they actually inhale those. It's more dangerous for them. They're down lower and inhale that in the carpet. I was worried about that child and the deprived action that the state was filing that. And again, look, you're right. I don't normally make a written note of an interview and a file, and I go through all this kind of stuff, and she's sitting there, and I said, so this, because of what the danger of this child, the significance, the amount of drugs, I absolutely remember this case, and I wrote this in there. And she just looks at me and says,
she's over there crawling under the table.
Yeah. And that was that thing. And just don't, she could have made the point, but just said, why? And like, oh, well, let me tell you why. And if you, and again, it's just, it's kind of talking about meth labs and drugs, a little bit of a home game for me. And you just ask me why to a jury.
I had a rookie defense lawyer ask me one time, he's saying stuff. I said, I was giving him an answer. I said, but are you asking for my opinion? He goes, yes. So I took a big, deep breath and I started going off. He tried to object. And the county attorney goes, Your Honor, he asked for his opinion. The judge goes, yes, you did. So you get what you, that is the longest sentence I ever had without a period on it. I mean, I just can't go.
Yeah.
Those don't come along very often.
Yeah, I know. And once. Once, because most of them are pretty good. They know not to fall for those traps. But hey, so let's close this out by talking about what are you doing now? So you've got this book. What's next? What do you, where are you at in your career? You still got a few years in you. You're going to do something else. What's next?
So right now, there's being the deputy director at the bureau. That is definitely a full plate. We have challenges. I mean, our fentanyl seizures are like four times higher, I think, than last year.
Tell us about the size of your agency too. Give us an example. How big is BNO?
So we have I think so we have agents, and so I'll include. We have several TFOs. I think we have 18 TFOs. I think I looked at the org chart. I think it puts us at 120 or 130. I should know. Which again, that's from an administrator standpoint. I love TFOs because they're not on our payroll, but they're the cases they do, why all those kind of things, they do kind of flow through our support divisions and property and our legal division. So we have probably about, I think we have, if all of our spots are filled, which they're not, we're in a constant state of getting those. I think we'd have about 200 employees, of which like 120, 130 would be agents. So now we have like 18 analysts, so that includes. So you get into kind of some support staff. We just all of the administrative aspects we have with our registrants and doctors, as of some of the civilian positions we have as well.
Good size agency.
Yeah. So, but what about you? How long are you going to hang in there? Got some plans for the future?
I can tell you, if I win that big ass Powerball, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to
first of all, don't tell anybody you want it.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. Everything's going to go in my wife's name. And you guys think, look, you're not going to believe this. There's some restraint to me right now. And at some point, I got a plan. At some point, it's ways off when I'm putting everything in my wife's name. And
you just went off the rails.
Pensions are secure. I'm going to have an exit interview with the world. And Daddy's got some shit to say. So that's way off in the future. I'm not there yet. Get my kids through college. It's the being the deputy director right now is probably taking. It's just a lot right now. I mean, I've been at it just about a year. And so there's some things I'm learning. It's to fully do that. I had to cut back a little bit of the teaching and speaking. I'm kind of behind on. I used to kind of release Fourth Amendment blogs of just I had a goal in 22 of just like twice a week releasing a warrantless search and seizure kind of quick tip blog, and taking all those as a manuscript for putting those together for the next one for like a warrantless search and seizure for police officers. I like the policy stuff. I think it's important. I do like speaking about search warrant writing, report writing, the things I have in both worlds, because I do feel like that's one thing I can do to kind of advance the public safety mission. At some point in time, I'll probably do again, remember when I released the manuscript in March 20th of 20, March of 21. We're coming up on 2 years. I'll probably do a second edition because there's a lot more data in there.
Because I was going to say, you really didn't address fentanyl, to the extent.
No, it wasn't a thing, right? It wasn't there. And so, again, and then all of the information, the data information we have with those, look, kind of Portland and all those things were starting right early on. And so there's a better historical record to kind of catch up on where we are with that. So,
Well, I like that too, because you're going to use data. It's not just about, oh, this is the way I feel, or it's now
Right.
it's not like, hey guys, here's the data.
Yeah.
Support your position.
We can't just go up and say, hey, that's a bunch of bullshit. It is.
But here's why.
Here's why.
And here's the data behind it. Here's the reasoning.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is to arm people with facts. I think the data's on our side. It's easy. It's just, and I told myself I would never write another nonfiction book again. It's so many citing sources and making sure it float. But
I've got it here, dude. I am looking through this, and like you said, you were quoting the one thing, Hayek, and you've got, I'm just looking through all the things, hair, rehab success rates, how effective is drug addiction treatment. I mean, you've got, this is, only a lawyer can write a 100-page document and call it a brief.
yeah,
You have got, I mean, this is like, something that's going to the Supreme Court with the citations and the precedents and everything else. I mean, once you read that, it's well sourced. It's not like you're not wanting for authoritative sources to go to. And again, like, what do you say, Murph? Hey, don't trust us. Go do your own research. Go find your own facts. Well, don't find your own facts. Find the facts, and you might have a different opinion.
But then make up your own mind.
Yeah, make up your own mind. So I think this is the point where we say the prosecution rests.
Yeah, buddy. I tell you what, Brian, it's been an honor to have you on here, brother. The stories are hilarious. They're very informative, and the topics that you're bringing up is just so appropriate for what's going on in our country today. So, what you're doing, keep doing it. We need more people that just like we just said, you're qualifying your opinions with facts, not just somebody spouting off with the mouth saying this is the way I think it ought to be for no reason at all.
Yeah. For police officers and prosecutors, we came in our opinions through experience. Again, it wasn't like what we read in the sociology book as a freshman in college, or what we heard the student union, or anything like that. I mean, there's a long, the college model is good, but there's been an apprentice model around for a much longer than our higher education.
That's the Mike Rowe method, man.
And look, if you look at law enforcement experience, there's a reason there's virtually no dissension in public safety on these issues. No, there's not two factions of there's not a small little minority. It would be almost insignificant of those that kind of deviate from these kind of beliefs. And again, they just arrive at that from their experience. They see all the time. And
there you go.
Well, look, brother, you know what we'll have to do? And Murph, let's think about this. Maybe what we do is we do a special episode. Like, we've got, pretty good size fan group on Facebook, but there's a whole thing to it. Just, let's just take apart some of the myths about search and seizure, about what you can do. And it's not, and I know some people that, you're giving away their playbook. No, folks. You want educated, you want people in the public educated as well, but you also want cops educated. You want them to know, so picking apart some of these myths, these common misconceptions. You can't do that. Yes, I can. What was it? It was Sherry, right? Sherry Foster said, if they ask if you're caught 3 times, you have to tell them.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
It's like
the other thing, the thing that, it's like some of these guys that they'll say that, I've seen interdiction guys, bless their heart, they said, you told him he's free to go. Was he free to go? And they say, no, you're a liar. You lied to him. And look, creating his state of mind, it's perfectly acceptable to lie to a defendant.
Trickery and chicanery were approved by the Supreme Court. Those were the two words.
Well, look, I said the point. So, look, if you don't like lying to a shitbag, undercover work's going to suck.
Yeah.
It ain't like you're going to say, you walk into a deal like, hey man, are you a cop? And like you say, God damn it. Hey, 1022 guys, the DE asked me. And so,
you got it out.
Man, son of a, you better watch it. I may catch you sometime you're not going to ask. I mean, it's just not
unbelievable.
And
people
so,
are idiots.
you see kind of those myths. And I mean, there's a whole bunch I've seen with Miranda and I mean, all kinds of stuff. And the suspect interview. So anyway, anytime I can do that.
Well, we'll have to figure out something, make a good use of your time. But look, this is us thanking you. People can't see this, me saluting you for your great work. Even though you're in Oklahoma, I know you wanted to be in Kansas and go to KU Law School, which I think would have been much better than the OU Law School. But hey, no, look, but it's kind of a special thing too, being from the Midwest. The people are great. It's a great, a lot of good, hardworking people out there. You just want to take care of them. So this is me. Thank you for protecting the Midwest, keeping things safe. I still have family in the Midwest, so I appreciate what you do. And look, we'll definitely get you back on. But what you have to do, folks, got to go get his book, and we'll put it on our book page again, Injustice for All, and it's in parentheses, Familiar Fallacies of Criminal Justice Reform by Brian Surber.
Check it out.
Thank you all very much. It has been an absolute honor, and I didn't think we'd talk this long, but next time let's just get a beer. How about that? Because this is the kind of stuff we do over a beer in the hospitality room.
There you go. All right, brother.
You don't go anywhere. Everybody stay right there and stay tuned for the debrief. I told you, good Midwest kid, makes good, finds a rapist in his courtroom just simply because he's nosy and he asks questions. The Amber Alert, Mozzie, the girl they recovered. I mean, how can you not listen to stuff like this and not go, oh, I love this stuff. I mean, these stories.
And he stressed the points that we're trying to get across with the whole purpose of Game of Crimes is to highlight what law enforcement does out there to help others, to protect those that can't help themselves. It's phenomenal. I love the interview. And one thing we didn't get to bring up is, Brian has been recognized several times with different awards for his work as a prosecutor as well as a police officer. 2001 and 2002, Association of Narcotic Enforcement Officers State Prosecutor of the Year. 2005, Distinguished Adjunct Faculty Award winner for Northern Oklahoma College. 2011 and 12, Association of Oklahoma Narcotic Enforcers State Officer of the Year. 12-13, recipient of Association of Oklahoma Narcotic Enforcement Officers Outstanding Achievement Award. 2015, Rogers County Co-Prosecutor of the Year. This guy, he's out there doing it. He's writing books. He's putting his opinion out there, and that's what I like about his book where you'd mentioned earlier about the police reform, Injustice for All, the Familiar Fallacies of Criminal Justice Reform. He's putting his opinion out there. He's not taking a party line. He's telling you what he's thinking, but it's not just opinion of Brian Surber. It's supported through science and facts, real facts, not just, oh, I heard somebody say that, so that makes it true. So loved everything he said. This was a fantastic guest to have on the show. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely great. So, and I'll tell you what, again, we'll put it on our website, just Injustice for All. Just make sure you go out. You can find that, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. Just download it, read it. And like you said, Steve, the thing I like, it's evidence-based, it's fact-based. It's not, he has an opinion, but his opinion is based upon, here's how I arrived at it, and then he goes through the data. So, and the book is it's footnoted. You might look at like a Supreme Court opinion. It's got all the footnotes. Everything is documented. If he says something, there's a footnote for it that documents it. So you got to read it. So
this is a #1 bestseller as well. So you can check it out.
#1. We only get #1s on here. Everybody's #1. You're a #1. I'm a #1. Everybody's #1. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed that. Again, if you did, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, hit those 5 stars. Let us know what you think about it. It's magic. We don't know how it works, but we just know that it does work. So, make sure you leave a review. Let us know what you think. Also, head on over to gameofcrimespodcast.com, where you will find information about the show here, as well as we've got the book listing for this, any pictures that Brian may or may not have sent us, or that we may have, fabricated, to show because he didn't send us a picture. We may make one up and stick it on there. With artificial intelligence, we can almost do anything these days. So we'll have some good pictures. So Brian, either you make sure you send us pictures, otherwise, guess what? So, and also head on over to that thing they call social media, at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. But where you got to be is Patreon, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Like we said, we're just released episode 14. By the time you hear this, the final episode 15 of The Real DEA Narcos on The Real DEA Narcos Cali Edition will be coming out, bringing it in to the gentlemen of the Cali Cartel. And I'm telling you, Steve, just the storytelling in it, with 15 hours, we probably could have had 30 hours, but we squeezed it into 15.
Yeah. And Chris, I tell you what, I think he's got an eidetic memory. That boy doesn't forget anything. But listen, as far as Game of Crimes and the Patreon channel, help us promote this. We're trying to grow our numbers. We're trying to get the word out. We get a lot of positive comments about law enforcement. That, people didn't realize that cops are really people too, that we have families, that we go through the same trials and tribulations that everybody else goes through. So we're trying to spread the word. So help us do that by telling your friends, have them tune in to Game and Crimes, download the episodes, give us the 5-star, or you give us the stars that you think we deserve. And I said 5 stars. That's what you should give us. But let us know your comments too. If there's something you like, let us know, because we'll continue to do it. If there's something you don't particularly like, let us know. I can't get rid of Morgan, so don't say that. I tried. He keeps coming back.
They tried. A lot of people want to, but
but let us know, because we want this to be a show that you want to listen to. We really look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah. So guys, stay tuned. We got more stuff coming up. And once again, thank you guys, our players out there, once again, for playing the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes.